Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1348 of the War News Stream. And we are back yet again after almost a week off air to move to Salt Lake City, all the way from Alabama. And of course, it is the Sunday night fundraiser stream, and we have very big news tonight. We have seen that Estonia warns of Russian Wagner presence on their border. Also, NATO reports large drones over nuclear sites, and Russia is preparing to defend Venezuela very soon. And we have very big news. It's good to see you all once again.
And of course, folks, we are going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news from around the world here in Enforcer HQ 3.0 in Salt Lake City, Utah. I hope that the audio is coming through incredibly good tonight. We are currently in the process of setting up the studio still, but hopefully the sound dampening is a little bit better than the last days we had on air right before we went off to make the move to Salt Lake. Also, by the way, another major shout out, we are running a Sunday night fundraiser tonight for none other than Nova Ukraine, an absolutely incredible nonprofit that has been helping out folks in Ukraine well over the years, well before the invasion of Ukraine started in 2022, and through y'all's support and amazing donations, they are able to help to continue to save the lives of children and families throughout the country, and not only that, help the Ukrainian government to focus their efforts on fighting the war and winning it. Also, by the way, I just want to put that out there really quickly on top of everything, that I am actually recovering from a very bad sickness. I got hit with a triple whammy as soon as we got into Salt Lake City, and so I'm still recovering from that at the moment. So if I sound nasally, it's not the microphone and it's not your audio, it's just that I'm still kind of sick. But we do have absolutely major news to cover from around the entirety of the world. We have been able to hear that the Ukrainian armed forces have given a deadly blow to the Russian Federation's critical infrastructure, oil refineries, and port infrastructure throughout the entirety of the country overnight, with another major Ukrainian drone attack currently being conducted at this moment. The Russian Federation is still reeling from the economic fallout, not only of the Ukrainian attacks on their oil infrastructure, but due to the fact of most of their major oil trading partners, including the Republic of Turkey, the Republic of India, and the People's Republic of China, are all greatly reducing their oil contracts and natural gas contracts with the Russian Federation, which is rapidly drying up the international oil markets that the Russian Federation has been able to hang on to life with, at least for several years at this point. In the meantime, Russian drones have been spotted over Europe once more, and we have been able to hear official confirmation today from Alexander Lukashenko that the balloons flying over Lithuania are not being done by smugglers alone, and actually do have the blessing and approval of the Belarusian government behind them, now confirming 100% that the theories and rumors that the balloons were actually launched by an officiated government program, either at Belarus or Russia, was an accurate assessment, and it does appear that this is a continued hybrid warfare campaign against the nation of Lithuania. In the meantime, in Belgium, we were able to hear of multiple drones flying over a airbase within the northern area of the country, which actually, interestingly enough, is home to the United States Air Force and its nuclear B61 gravity bombs. These gravity bombs were directly flown over by the drones, and these drones were then chased off from the airfield until the helicopters following them lost sight. We've also heard of additional U.S. military buildups around the area of the Caribbean, with jungle warfare training being conducted in Panama, and also at the same time in the area of Puerto Rico, continued U.S. military buildups and improvements to the Roosevelt Roads military installation and base are still currently ongoing at this time, with the USS Gerlad R Ford carrier strike group still off the coast of Sicily inside the Mediterranean and still outbound, making heavy steam towards the area of the Caribbean. In the meantime, Venezuela is asking for foreign assistance from the Russian Federation, the People's Republic of China, or the Islamic Republic of Iran to either help them with tips and pointers, military technology, or any form of training that may be prudent to be able to help them to try and fight off the potential U.S. attack that still appears inevitable at this point. We have also been able to hear that inside of East Asia, the United States of America is continuing a significant military presence within the area of the Western Philippine Sea, with the USS Nimitz carrier strike group continuing to face off the People's Republic of China within the area of the international waters of the West Philippine Sea. We have also heard of some US B-1 Lancers flying into that direction over the course of the day while their transponders were on, and the President of the United States has also made it quite clear that China will not invade Taiwan because there is going to be dire consequences for the Chinese, largely insinuating the outbreak of total war. We have also heard that the United States of America is still insinuating that there will be a future action against Venezuela, while at the same time, we are also now considering an action in Nigeria due to the statement of an ongoing genocide against Christian minorities within the northern parts of the country. The Ukrainian armed forces have also continued to hold off the Russian Federation today and have inflicted significant losses and also have held their ground. We have an absolutely massive and unreal amount of news that we have to cover over just the past 48 hours alone. But luckily, folks, we have nothing but time to cover it with all of y'all. And of course, we are more than happy to be back on air and getting to cover all of this news with each and every one of y'all, once again returning to our normal schedule starting this very day tonight. And so,
and honestly, a big shout out to the U.S. military administration, by the way, because they apparently held off the entire time we were moving before they started to invade Venezuela. They haven't done it yet either. So thankfully, they held off. Now we can cover it whenever it does pop off, because I'm sure it still will. But yeah, they held off for the time being.
Yeah, I got to be honest with y'all. That was actually crazy. Usually we're like the harbingers of doom. Whenever we're off air, something terrible happens. And this time we were off air and nothing extremely bad happened. I mean, it was mostly status quo, at least for all the bad things that were currently happening. So, you know, hey, I mean, not that bad. So we're right back to it. And it looks like anything major, we will be here to, of course, have the honor of covering it live for all of y'all. But moving on into the major news that we have gotten over the course of this night, we have an absolutely major story that has come out of the Russian Federation over the course of just the past 24 hours alone. The Ukrainian armed forces have conducted another major drone attack against the Russian Federation and its critical infrastructure throughout the country. We have seen attacks reaching as far in as the area of Saratov and as far south as the city of Tuapse, which was the most heavily hit over the course of the night. The port of Tuapse is a somewhat smaller one and is generally flown over the radar for the most periods of time throughout the coverage of news here on the channel. However, recently Tuapse has started to make it onto the news, as a lot of the larger Russian oil ports, like for example Ust-Luga or Novorossiysk, have started to be hit so heavily that their oil export capacities have dropped to practically nothing, meaning that the Russians are now having to divert to tertiary ports, like Tuapse and others, to be able to try and get ships in to load the oil onto and then ship them out into the greater world to try and make the little bit of elusive cash that still can be made by the Russian Federation. And the port of Tuapse plays a somewhat significant role in this. You can actually see it right here. This is the oil loading platform in the port of Tuapse. Funnily enough, it's actually right outside the breakwaters, which makes this very hard to defend, at least for the Russian Federation. Still, the Ukrainians did conduct an attack on the area, and we were able to see, at least from our first clip, that there was some air defense that was going on within the area. Quite a lot of it, actually.
Да нет, тут прям над
The
городом, там ты не
usual,
увидишь.
usual spray and pray tactics they always like to employ when they don't really have good air defense.
Man, they always love the spray and pray. The spray and pray has never been proven wrong, folks, right?
Ебать,
Oh, it was
город,
proven
это
wrong.
мир.
You'll see in a second. Oh, what's
О!
that?
Oh
Oh!
my god!
Oh,
look,
nice
he's
gaming
got a
keyboard.
setup.
Bro, nice gaming keyboard. Oh, man. But moving on from that, we did get to see that there was a significant strike within Tuapse. It actually appears that not only did the Ukrainians hit the oil loading platform, but they also hit the actual tankers themselves that were sitting at the oil loading platform, meaning that they not only caused damage to the actual structure that they were aiming to hit, they also caused damage to the vessels we would assume that are a part of the shadow tanker fleet that are operating and continuing to make the Russians money so that they can finance the war. We also got an additional bit of proof of the damage that was caused to the oil terminal here in these two pictures. This one was somewhat far away and obscured by fog, but this closer up picture does once again prove to us here that there was a direct hit not only on the platform but on the tanker as well. This is a very important sort of a deal because it lets us know that the Russian Federation not only has lost the Tuapse oil loading platform, but it also means that a ship is most likely heavily damaged within that area and may have to sit there while firefighting efforts are still being conducted, or if the damage is heavy enough, it may warp the steel to where it will buckle, let in water, and the ship may settle within that very shallow area, meaning that they'll have to refloat it and then pull it away, meaning that that area of the oil platform would be unusable during that period of time until the ship is removed one way or another. Either way...
Dang, also, by the way, real quick, Enforcer, a huge shout out, by the way. We got some massive donations coming in right now for the fundraiser tonight. Don Edwards just threw in a 250, along with Frank the Tank threw in a 100, and AJ that threw in a 135 as well. So we're about to hit 1,000 raised already this early in the stream. So a huge
Holy
shout out to
smokes. That is absolutely crazy. I gotta say, unbelievable, folks, and a huge congratulations to all of y'all for already fundraising that much. That is truly unbelievable. I mean, it's only been 19 minutes in, and we're almost all the way to about halfway to the goal. That is truly incredible, and I gotta say, a huge shout out to folks like Don Edwards, who threw in a 250, and AJ, who threw in 135. Y'all are doing absolutely incredible work, and Frank the Tank, who threw in 100, and everyone else, y'all are doing absolutely unbelievable on this fundraiser tonight, which is a really great way to return to streaming. Also, by the way, folks, while someone just went by in a boosted Civic, I'm gonna have to keep it down a little bit because my vocal cords are already getting spent just about 10 minutes in. So, moving on from that, we are going to be moving out of the area of Tuapse and a little bit further south, as we did see that the damage from the oil loading platform was significant enough that leakage has occurred and is being seen several dozen miles down the coast. You can see that oil slick right here.
Бедные зельдеры. Как не разлив, так нефть вся здесь.
Honestly, Russia has a bad history of doing this right here. It seems like Russia's caused so many ecological disasters just over the last 6 months or just 12 months alone. It's insane at this point. It seems like oil slicks are pretty much commonplace.
Yeah, honestly, man, it's like, I remember back in the day in the South, we always used to talk about that BP oil spill that happened in the Gulf. Honestly, what the hell do we even call these from Russia? It's like, there isn't even anything that you can call them, like, the BP oil spill of, like, 2009. It's like, what is this? The Russian oil spills of the 2020s? I guess that's what you call it? Like, it's like a giant overarching event. But beyond that, it does appear that the Russian Federation didn't have that great of a time, at least around Tuapse, but up near Novorossiysk, they didn't really have that great of a time either, as in the Krasnodar Krai Oblast, right outside of Novorossiysk, this tugboat caught on fire and just sank out of the blue. Nobody knows why. It wasn't hit by a drone, wasn't hit by anything. It just exploded and then sank. So, everyone's trying to figure that one out. I don't know what the hell caused that, and I don't really know if the Ukrainians did that, but it was interesting, nonetheless. Also, by the way, I just got to tell y'all, generally ships don't explode. That's like pretty rare for them to do that. So this was a freak occurrence to the point we had to point this out. because I have no clue what could cause such a catastrophic explosion. Because from what everyone was saying, apparently there was some sort of a critical explosion inside of the tug, and then the fire started to spread rapidly throughout the tugboat after the explosion. So what I'm guessing might have happened, if we were to take what would be the most normal sort of an explanation, is that the engines inside of the engine bay or the machinery spaces just completely exploded, and then that led to an explosion of the fuel tanks and a subsequent fire that led to the sinking of the tug. Basically a lack of maintenance. Nothing shocking there, but moving on from that and on into the next clip, outside of Novorossiysk and further on up inside of the Russian Federation, further damage was even caused by the Ukrainian armed forces overnight at the Saratov refinery. And Saratov and Ingles has been on the news endless times here on the channel. Saratov and Ingles is home to major amounts of critical infrastructure and also military capabilities for the Russian Federation, including that of the Ingles Air Base, which has been heavily used by the Russian strategic bomber fleet throughout the course of the war. But more importantly, directly across from that, on the other side of the river, is the Saratov refinery, which is a somewhat larger complex. This refinery is one of the larger ones in the Russian Federation, and is generally considered to be a pride, at least economically, of the Russians' money-making abilities. It turns them a penny, basically put. And it didn't really turn him a penny last night. Air defense was active over Saratov. We could see clips and proof of that, with the explosions being seen in the sky, possibly suggesting surface-to-air missiles being used. But later on in the night, we then got to see this clip. There's the refinery. Oh, and there was a local explosion.
Yes. I see you know your explosions well. Good one, sir.
And you, sir, are you ready to receive my limp condensator? How dare you, sir? But beyond that, it does appear that that hit was quite a crucial one, because we've been able to hear that the refinery has been completely shut down due to the attacks last night. While we only saw one explosion in that clip, we actually have been able to hear that several drones did hit at least 3, and that caused enough damage to lead the entire refinery to shut down, meaning that while the Russians are already dealing with shrinking oil markets and also shrinking availability of domestic usable fuel supplies, they are also dealing with refineries being put out of action pretty much on the daily at this point. Meanwhile, the Russian Federation also dealt with another situation inside of Moscow. While Ukrainian drones landed around here, they ended up, funnily enough, knocking out the energy grid. As you can see here, there was a blackout throughout the southern area of Moscow around the Zhukovsky City district. We also saw here in this clip what can be described as the modern Russian rave. Gone are the days of multicolored lights and a whole bunch of people wearing like fluorescent clothes. Nowadays, they just flick on the street lights on and off, and that's what a Russian rave is these days. But take a look at it. It's truly something magical.
Honestly, that right there, that's a little bit spooky to me. If that's happening in Russia and the lights are flickering like that, I would assume that something bad's about to happen, so I'd probably go, take off if it were me.
Ooh, it's the ghost of Gobnik Yaga, man. He's here to steal. He's here to steal your chrome rims.
That's the tweaker in the corner with the screwdriver, fiddling with the power lines. Don't worry about that.
Man, in America, there's the legend of Sleepy Hollow. Here in Russia, it's the legend of Gopnik Sam and his screwdriver, man. Man, and also it's up to interpretation, folks, whether the screwdriver is the drink or the tool. It's up to you. But beyond that, we also got this last clip here of the blackout, and this does look just straight up blacked out. There's no lights at all.
Man, literally, it's a blackout. Like, you can barely see anything in this. Also, I find it interesting that Ukraine is really going for Moscow more recently. Like, obviously, we've been off air for the last week, but we have been following the news throughout our move as much as possible. It seems like Ukraine is really, really going for the outer ring perimeter of Moscow with these drone attacks, which is something that's somewhat new because they've done it before, but they're seeming to pick up the frequency of the attacks, which seems to be a big escalation.
And that actually is somewhat interesting. While we haven't been able to cover this over the past week, and we also really can't cover it tonight, the Ukrainians are starting to attack a larger amount of the cities that make up the Moscow metropolitan area, specifically around the Moscow Air Defense Perimeter Ring, which we actually have here on the map. It's this little line that's in maroon around the southwestern corner of the city. The Ukrainians have started to conduct significant attacks on larger cities within this area, including Odintsovo, Podolsk, Zhukovsky, and also a few attacks on Zelenograd. It appears to be a coordinated effort to start knocking out the power supplies or power infrastructure of the larger part of the extremities of the city of Moscow. If that is the case, this could actually start to cause a decent amount of demoralization within the Russian population, and also on top of that, this may start to cause a significant and even far greater strain on the Russian government's limited availabilities of supply that they're already dealing with right now. It is something to say the least that the Russians are not doing that well on the finances side of things. Also, on the raw material side of things, they're not really doing that well either. So these sorts of blackouts could not only start to expend Russia's money way farther than they have any, but it could also extend their available material supplies way farther than they have at the moment as well. Generally not a good situation for the Russian Federation to be in at all. And on top of that, forgot to give you all the icing on the cake here, but that all happened about 16 hours ago. Right now, just 2 hours ago, another major Ukrainian drone attack is underway. So there is going to be even more on top of what we're talking about right now. That will probably be coming out by tomorrow, and Enforcer Matt will be the one making that video if there is a short war video to be made tomorrow. I have to try and fix something with my video editor that happened right before we moved, and there's a whole hoopla with that, but hopefully that'll get fixed tomorrow, and then we'll be 100% back up to operational ability as soon as humanly possible. But moving on further north and into the rest of Russia, considering that there are some more interesting things going on, we were able to see this very freak occurrence around the area of the Narva River. Now, the Narva River is an interesting place. The city of Narva is actually named after the river, but the Narva River actually spans the border between Estonia and Russia, and this river has been a point of concern, at least recently, in NATO strategist circles, because of the Narva Bridge. This bridge is the only bridge that crosses the Narva River in this area between Russia and Estonia. It's pretty much a choke point. If the Russians end up securing that bridge in the first opening hour of an attack, they'll pretty much be able to guarantee that they'll be able to keep flowing their forces across and into the city of Narva and further on into the rest of Estonia. If the bridge is destroyed outright before the Russians can take it, that means that the Russians are pretty much trapped on the other side of the river and there's really no easy way to get across. Now, because of that, there's been a decent amount of tensions between NATO and Russia over this very area, and we were able to see recently that a Russian Coast Guard vessel, which usually are conducting continuous patrols up and down the Narva River and near to its opening in the area of the Gulf of Finland, was seen sporting a very interesting flag. And this was one that actually provoked a response from the Estonians to ask, what the Coast Guard doing? But here's the clip.
Oh, wow, well, look at that now. That looks like a group that used to exist, but got their asses handed to them, basically. But that's weird. That's like flying the flag of a defunct organization or a losing country right there. That's a quite interesting choice.
Yeah, also I like how they're fording the chocolate river of Willy Wonka. I don't know what the water is like, but man, like the foam has literally got like this yellowish color to it that doesn't really look good. But beyond that, this Coast Guard vessel was flying the Wagner flag, and this made the Estonian government actually reach out and ask the Russians, why are they flying that? And so far there's been no response, which was expected. But it's still interesting to see that they are flying the flag of the PMC Wagner. And let me go show you all that flag up close really quickly, because it's one of importance, at least historically. So, let me get the flag here. Here we go. This is the one that everyone would know. This is the one I think that they claim. Yeah, this is the one that they had after the coup. This is not the one that anyone cares about. This is after they became pretty much non-existent. This is the one that they used all the way up until the Prigozhin coup of the summer of 2023. This is the flag that they were flying on top of the Coast Guard vessel. Now, this flag is a little bit of an interesting one because, at least in Russia, it has a really actually bad history, at least as far as the central Russian government is concerned. The PMC Wagner was a very important part of Russia's unofficial right arm of the government overseas, at least in terms of international power projecting. And by using the Wagner PMC, Russia was able to go pretty much around the world, usually into underdeveloped areas, and use the strong arm of the Wagner to be able to take control of things like large oil fields, diamond mines, and such other enterprises to bring money back to the Russian Federation, back to the Russian government, and to generally make wealth for the people who run Russia, like Putin. Things started to change, though, after the war in Ukraine. The Wagner was generally recalled from most places around the world, and they were then put, as a private military company, directly onto the front line, and not only on the front line, directly in the Battle of Bakhmut, which was the bloodiest and worst battle that had been seen up until that point in the war. The Battle of Bakhmut was fierce and devastating. The Wagner PMC, at least initially, was believed to have had a size of about 40 to 50,000 men. By the end of the Battle of Bakhmut, only 10,000 of those men were left alive. All other 40,000 had generally been killed, and a few of those had ended up surviving wounded, but most of the members of the Wagner PMC were killed inside the Battle of Bakhmut. As a response to this, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who was the head of the Wagner PMC, I'll show you all that guy right here. Let's see, where is he? Oh yeah, here we go. That guy. We used to call him the nutsack when he was alive, but beyond that, he was a guy who ran the Wagner PMC, and he started to become disillusioned with the Russian government because of how they sent his private military company, and pretty much himself, directly into the deadliest meat grinder of the war yet seen at that point, and pretty much just told him to suck it up. So, he then ordered, in the middle of June of 2023, he just ordered the Wagner PMC right off the front line, and they then went on the March of Glory, as we call it. They drove all the way from Bakhmut down out of Ukraine into the area around Shakhty, where everyone surrendered. They then drove down to Rostov-on-Don, where everyone also promptly surrendered to the Wagner, and then they drove all the way up the interstate, almost straight to Moscow. They made it all the way... Sorry, folks. They made it all the way up to the city of Lipitsy, right here on the M2 motorway, across right at the Oka River. This was pretty much the last natural barrier between the Wagner and Moscow. But right here at the town of Lipitsy, for a reason that officially is still unknown to this day, the Wagner PMC stopped their coup 23 hours in. And then they completely stopped any hostile actions against the Russian government. It was only a few months after that Yevgeny Prigozhin would die mysteriously along with his right-hand man in a private jet flight that was shot down just directly north of Tver by local air defense forces. It was then assumed in an investigation after that there was an accident and just simply friendly fire, but we all know what it was. It was Putin killing an enemy of his leadership and his government, and that's generally how it went. Still, that's the story and the history of the Wagner. So the Coast Guard flying the flag of the Wagner over their boat is really confusing because, for one, if you take it for what the Wagner is, that could mean that the Russians are trying to conduct some sort of illicit operation in Estonia, and they're trying to message that to the Estonians by flying this flag. Or it could be that these guys actually aligned with the Wagner and this wasn't approved by the Russian government, and so now the Estonians are about as confused as I am, to be entirely honest, because it just doesn't make any sense. But beyond that, a lot of people haven't been talking about the Wagner flag on top of that Coast Guard vessel. And Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So first of all, I got to say the Russian Coast Guard must have hit extra hard times because that little rinky-dink boat right there they're using for their Coast Guard patrol is pathetic. And also that flag is pathetic too because it's literally defunct at this point. But back to the poll question. It says Estonia reports spotting a Russian Coast Guard boat flying a Wagner flag on their border over the Narva River, and what's going on. And 54% said Russia is trying to intimidate Estonia, while 31% said Russia's testing the Estonian response, and 9% said it seems like a random act and maybe someone did this on their own accord and it was not sanctioned by the Russian government. So on this one, I got to say, it's a little bit strange. I'm a little bit confused by it because, like we said, Wagner is pretty much defunct. Whatever was left of Wagner was absorbed into the Russian Ministry of Defense, and they've kind of gone to the wayside. So Wagner technically doesn't truly exist anymore in the way it did. So whatever this is about right here, I would say largely it's probably for intimidation because the way Wagner was used is it was used as a force to put some plausible deniability in between the Russian government and these Russian paramilitary forces, which is Wagner. there, and they were usually the force that went into other places and caused mayhem and chaos. So this has a very strong connotation of fear when it comes to Estonia, and I think that's why they're flying the flag. It's purely for intimidation value, and that's pretty much it. So I'm with the 54%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I had to be honest, I think I'd be with the 54% as well. I think it's some form of an intimidation tactic, although I'm not really understanding the premise behind it, because it's not exactly like the Wagner went out on the greatest of terms, even with the Russian government, because in its final hours of pretty much existing, they almost overthrew Putin. I don't know how many of y'all who are watching the channel right now were around for when that happened, but it was insane. I mean, the Russian government almost got overthrown. It was about an hour away from happening. They had driven all the way up to Moscow. They had faced absolutely no resistance. As a matter of fact, everyone along the highway either surrendered to them or joined them on their march to Moscow. So it wasn't really like these people were just some fringe group. They pretty much showed that the entire system was about to collapse even back then, if there was any sort of resistance internally to the Putin regime. I mean, it was a crazy sort of a thing to watch. So it's not really like these people are still the extension that they were of the Russian government. I mean, they almost killed off the Russian government. So I don't really know what kind of intimidation tactic this is, because, I mean, hell, that's like saying, oh, you know, the boogeyman came out of my closet one night and almost killed me. So to scare my neighbor, let me whip out a stuffed plushie of the boogeyman and put it in my window. It's like, how in the world does that scare the neighbor? Honestly, that's more scary to me, it would seem, than the neighbor.
Yeah, do you think that maybe the Russian Coast Guard's flying the Wagner flag because they think that the actual Russian military has gotten so weak that really won't intimidate Estonia that bad? So they're bringing out the flag of defunct Wagner, which actually had some credibility behind it, at least somewhat, to try to scare the Estonians because they're not even confident that Putin's army is even intimidating anymore.
Maybe. I mean, that might be the case, because, you know, the Russian military isn't exactly on any sort of a comparable level to anyone anymore, and everyone knows that. So maybe that's the case, but it's absolutely bizarre nonetheless that they'd fly it, because it just doesn't make any sense to me at all, folks. Like, it really doesn't, because it's like, sure, maybe the Wagner is a little scary to people here in the West, but I mean, hell, I think it's more scary to the Russian government at this point to think that they're even around at all, at least on their end, because it's like, who in the world did the Wagner almost destroy? Was it the West or Russia? It was Russia. So, you know, that seems that it would be a lot more scarier to them than us. But anyways, one thing that actually is a little bit concerning is that we did get to hear that the Russians did christen the Khabarovsk today, and that was a fairly interesting sort of a development. So really quickly summarize this for all of y'all. Russia has launched a nuclear submarine capable of carrying Poseidon drones. According to Russian media, the nuclear sub Khabarovsk can carry up to 12 nuclear-powered unmanned torpedoes. Moscow claims the Poseidon system can strike targets anywhere in the world's oceans. Oh, like an ICBM, and in the sea with extra steps. The launch ceremony took place at the Sevmesh shipyard in Severodinsk, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Basically, it's Severodinsk. That's the name of the city if I was to like bastardize it into English, but I'm trying to do my best here. Anyways, this is the shipyard that it was launched out of right here. Beyond that, from what we understand, it's designed for long-range strategic missions and can operate in the open ocean as a part of the nuclear arsenal. One thing that's very interesting to know every single time a submarine is ever launched is that they always cover up the propeller. If y'all know anything about submarines, and it's actually a really cool fact about this, propellers give off a specific frequency in the water when they cavitate. And cavitation is when a propeller is spinning in the water, or a screw is spinning in the water, and it actually creates these little air bubbles when it does that. These air bubbles will then separate from the propeller at some point and then pop, and that makes noise, and that's what's called cavitation. And every single propeller is designed differently, at least for different types of vessels. Most commercial vessels will generally at least have some kind of a similar or mass-produced propeller design, depending on the class, but most submarines actually have a specially made propeller just for them. So usually whenever you see ceremonies like these, they'll always cover up the propeller in a shroud. So that way anyone around the world, like us watching here, can't just look straight at the propeller and go, oh, look at that, and then remodel it in a computer and then just see exactly how it would cavitate to be able to put that into a computer system here in America, and then have a submarine immediately hear that and go, that is 100% the Khabarovsk. So that's actually why that shroud is on the submarine propeller. Just an interesting side note there. But we could see the christening and launching ceremony here. We could also see the banker guy who's now the Minister of Defense, which makes no sense, but he's the one who was there at the christening ceremony today.
And the big deal about this submarine is it can launch the Poseidon weapon. Is that the big deal about it?
Yeah, it can launch the Poseidon nuclear torpedo.
That is so dumb. I don't understand why the Russians are making such a big deal about this Poseidon weapon, because their whole big claim to fame for the weapon is that it can cause a massive tsunami and can actually affect the shorelines of their enemy countries they're trying to attack. So it's like any nuclear weapon can do that. Like any of them can. If you place it right, it can do that. So why are they acting like this one is like so revolutionary or something? It's really not revolutionary at all.
I really don't know, to be entirely honest with you. Here's an actual picture, by the way, folks, of the torpedo, the Poseidon at least. It's absolutely stupid. It's one of these magical weapons that the Russians come up with. It's basically repackaging a nuke in a different way. It doesn't make any sense. But it does use a liquid metal reactor for its propulsion system, which is pretty wild and honestly kind of stupid. It gets up to a max speed, at least according to them, of about 100 knots. And let's see here. Trying to see about the yield. Let's see here. Specifications. Oh, here we are. Maybe it'll be under that. Stealth technology, super cavitation.
There's the tsunami claims right there. They're saying they can create a 500-meter high tsunami. Honestly, that is so goofy to me. Literally, any nuclear weapon can do that. It's not limited to the Poseidon. It's not like the Poseidon was the first one to create a big wave. It's like if you put any nuclear weapon in the water and you detonate it under the surface, it's going to obviously displace a ton of water and create a massive tsunami. That's common knowledge.
So it's actually believed that this thing has a yield of about 100 megatons, which is pretty damn big, actually. But also this is just stupid. I mean, this is the stupidest weapon to ever exist. Every single modern nuclear weapon that Russia comes up with, it's one of these three. Either it's a reinvention of an ICBM and then the shit explodes every single time they even try to launch it in a test, or it is a cruise missile, which is stupid because, you know, they only go 600 miles an hour. They're detectable on radar. And although they can fly in unlimited range, you can just shoot them down wherever they are. And that's, you know, one and done, lickety split. And then the other thing that they create are these stupid torpedoes, and they go 100 miles an hour. So, hell, I mean, if you launched one of those torpedoes, say where you don't want the submarine to get damaged, so I would assume several hundred miles away, maybe all the way out here, that would take 6 hours to reach Britain. So if anyone ever detected that submarine, well, the torpedo more so, with any underwater microphone relay, they would already know it's coming. I mean, they would 100% know it's coming hours before it ever arrived. Russia would be destroyed before the nuke even hit Britain. Honestly, everything that Russia makes as a nuclear weapon these days is just a straight-up gimmick. The reason why everyone went to ICBMs back in the day is because all these ideas that Russia is using these days are absolutely stupid, and everyone knew that back then. Because way back in the day, if y'all don't know this, America was the first one to come up with the idea of a nuclear-powered cruise missile. And then we completely abandoned it because ICBMs became a thing, and we said, why in the world would we use a nuclear-powered cruise missile when we could just use an intercontinental ballistic missile to do the job in far less time and far more efficiently? And so then we just completely gave up on the concept. We also came up with the idea of hypersonic missiles. And then we went, well, that's absolutely stupid. What point would these things actually serve in modern warfare? Even back then, we didn't see the purpose in them. We completely abandoned the concept. We also, at a time, did come up with the idea of nuclear-armed torpedoes. And then we were like, those are absolutely stupid. Why in the world would we ever use them? We're just going to get rid of them. And then we got rid of those. Hell, there are an endless amount of things that the United States came up with and then abandoned, and nowadays, what is so goofy, folks, is that the Russians and the Chinese are whipping out of the old box, like, all these old ideas that we came up with that were pretty much pointless back then, and then they turn them into something that they actually field nowadays, And then everyone goes, oh my God, the Russians and the Chinese, they're like years ahead of us now, decades ahead of us, as a matter of fact, because they have this stupid missile that's nuclear powered and it can fly forever, or they have this goofy torpedo. And it's like, it's like, I don't know if these people know this, but it's like, that's not decades ahead of us. That's 70 years behind us. We came up with that stuff 70 years ago and then abandoned it because it was completely pointless and impractical in a modern warfighting scenario, even in the 60s. So if it was impractical in the 60s, it's definitely impractical today. There's no doubt about that. It does appear, though, that a lot of people are taking this little foray that the Russians are doing into nuclear gimmicks as a sign that they might be a little scared, maybe. And Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so Poseidon is only one of the many mega weapons that Russia is currently releasing and hyping up tremendously. So they're doing a lot in a very short span of time, which indicates Russia is either panicking or they're preparing to attack, one or the other. So it looks like about 79% of the audience said Russia is getting very scared and they're saber rattling, and that's why they're releasing the Poseidon missile and these other mega weapons, while 15% said Russia is preparing to attack, and this is their version of trying to intimidate everybody, and 3% said it seems like natural developments that were going to happen anyway, but just happened to line up perfectly with these new developments around the world. So I would say personally, to me, it seems like Russia is extremely scared. They are getting very worried because what's the one thing they're waiting on? They're waiting to see if the U.S. is going to send Tomahawks to Ukraine, and they're trying to scare the U.S. off from doing that by releasing these new Wunderwaffe weapons, or these mega weapons, to scare the West off. And it seems like it might be slightly working, actually, because we have not heard the final call being made on Tomahawks yet. That is still up in the air. I heard the Pentagon approved it, but is currently waiting on the president to give the final word on it, and we have not heard any reporting so far that he gave the final approval to send the Tomahawks. So of course, the one thing you'll notice with these mega weapons, by the way, like for example the Poseidon, the claim is it'll create a 500-meter tsunami that's going to wipe out the coast. What does that like harken back to? It harkens back to like movies, like movie style action or something. It's something that like a simple-minded person would really understand really quickly, and it's designed to scare people. So when you think of something horrifying, you think of a massive tsunami coming through your coast. That scares people, and I think that's the whole reason behind it. It's just simply to intimidate the West into backing down so Russia can continue their invasion of Ukraine. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say the Russians are just terrified. Everything that they do with the nuclear weapons programs is completely pointless. Everything that they're trying to achieve right now could be achieved with ICBMs. And they sit there and say, oh, this time, this torpedo, it's going to be completely undetectable, completely unstoppable, and the stupid cruise missile is going to be completely unstoppable and completely undetectable. But you know what's so stupid about that, folks, is that torpedoes and cruise missiles are 100% detectable and destructible. The ICBMs that they already have right now are the only things that we actually can't defend against. They can't defend against ours either. There's just no way to do it, because the ICBMs fly at such a great speed that it's impossible to really stop them, especially once they get to their terminal phase where they're about to make impact. They're going about Mach 32 by that point. There's no way in hell that you can ever say a Mach 32 ICBM is not as good as a Mach 10 hypersonic, or a 600 mile per hour cruise missile, or a 100 mile per hour torpedo. The ICBM trumps all. That's why everyone went to that decades ago, and no one's ever gotten off of that. Everything else is a gimmick, a waste of time and resources. Now, in the modern day, the Russians are just trying to come out with every single kit in the bag that they can find, even coming through our own toolkit right now of all the stuff that we came up with and abandoned decades ago. And then saying, oh, look, we got the super weapon now. We'll beat everyone in the world with this thing. And it's the dumbest premise I've ever seen. It really is just showing fear, and they're really trying to more so strike fear in the U.S. public by doing this, because if they strike fear in the U.S. public, many people in the public don't know a lot about the military side of things, so, of course, they're not going to know that a lot of these weapon systems are about 60 years old and 70 years old in concept and design. They're going to look at it and go, oh my god, the Russians are, making all these crazy nuclear weapons. It's scary and they could kill us. And then they're thinking that the U.S. Citizenry will put pressure on the president to try and end the war, or really just give the Russians whatever they want, pretty much appeasement. It's a complete joke. And also another thing, just before some people are like, well, the Russians, they're ahead of us. They come up with stuff that we haven't come up with. We came up with everything. If you think that we didn't, you're mistaken. We actually had for a while in the U.S. Air defense arsenal these, which are the MEM-14 Nike Hercules. And Matthew, do you know what was really unique about these?
They had the swoosh on the side of them.
Not only did they have the Nike swoosh, these things were actually nuclear-armed surface-to-air missiles.
Really?
Yeah, so what the idea was at the time is that these could either use their nuclear warhead to blow up on an incoming ICBM and attempt to destroy it, or these could be launched into a Russian bomber formation and wipe out dozens or hundreds of bombers with a single missile.
Well, that's a doozy there. That's an actual weapon that actually did work, though. Like, that one actually did work.
Yeah, this one was actually working and usable, and it wasn't ever used, of course, but it was fielded heavily across the whole of the United States, and also the aesthetic of these is clean as hell. I mean, these things look like a missile. I mean, these things are really cool. But outside of that, I would have to say that if you ever tell me, folks, that one of our enemies has come up with something that we've never come up with yet, I'm always going to tell you that you're wrong, because the truth of the fact is that America generally, or at least the Western world as a whole, amongst all of our allies and the United States, we've come up with practically everything over here. So if anyone in Russia or China is saying, oh, let's make a missile that can fly over the South Pole, I can promise you we already looked into that and then abandoned the idea because it was just completely pointless to do. Or if the Chinese come up with something like a hypersonic missile, we already came up with that a long time ago, once again in the 60s, and then completely abandoned it because we said, why do that when we have an ICBM? That makes no sense to do that anymore. And so I can promise you, folks, that if the Russians are ever doing something like this, coming out with these stupid torpedoes and a submarine to launch them, this whole thing is a fear-mongering tactic. On top of that, this submarine is a standalone. It's the only one in the fleet of its class that can do this. So, once again, they're showing that they have no money to make this a fleet-wide ability, and this isn't a part of their larger nuclear deterrence. It's a one-trick pony circus gimmick from the freak show that's wandering around in the Russian Navy just to try and put some fear in some people around the world over a pointless weapon system. But
Also remember, in addition to the Poseidon, the other weapon they just came out with was a nuclear-powered cruise missile. It was the thing that they said they were going to test during Zapad. They did not test it during Zapad, and instead they claim that they tested it just about a week ago. So that's the claim, is they finally tested that thing. But I don't think they've still released any footage of it. Like, I've not seen any footage showing that weapon being actually tested, which strikes me as being a little bit suspicious, honestly, because if they really tested it, then where is all the Russian propaganda footage showing the thing actually flying? And we still haven't seen it.
honestly, man, I think the Burevestnik never did fly during that test. I think that they had that one picture because they always use that one still image of the thing. Let me go pull it up. Burevestnik, right here. Yeah, here it is. It's that famous one picture that they have of it, and it's really blurry and it's really crappy looking. Oh, look, this one's actually high definition. But this is the only picture they have of the thing, and they've never shown anything beyond that. And it's like, is this thing
Yeah.
even real? Like, did it actually launch?
Yeah, is it real? That's a huge question too, to see the footage itself. And also on top of that, it's like where are the answers? And of course, Russia's not going to give the answers, but everybody would like to know how much nuclear exhaust is coming out of this thing. Because if it's nuclear powered, then surely there has to be some type of radioactive contamination behind the trail of this missile. So whoever flies over, is it just radiating all these people or what? Because obviously, if you have a nuclear reactor sitting at the back of it as the engine, that's obviously going to create some problems.
Also, what the hell is this title, man? Burevestnik's unlimited range and flight time. Putin shows off nuclear-powered monster exposing Trump's Golden Dome. How the hell does this
Yo,
expose the Golden Dome? And also, that was very
the wording
sus
is
sounding.
sus.
Hey,
The
yo,
wording is
what?
messed
No
up.
Diddy. Like, no Diddy. Ain't nothing like a Diddy party. But what did... That is the stupidest title ever. This thing does not defeat the Golden Dome in any way. As a matter of fact, the Golden Dome is pretty much like designed to shoot this thing down, really. So this is the like I would bet you money, folks. I'm gonna do this off air really quick. Let's see here. Oh yeah, you wouldn't believe it, folks. This article was written by a person in India. Who would have ever believed that an article saying that Russia is beating the United States in weaponry would come from India? That's just really new to me. Because usually whenever you see an article like that, folks, that's saying that someone's finally got us, the U.S. is cornered. I can bet you money it was either written by some Asian news agency from China or some other Southeast Asian country like Cambodia or Vietnam, or it was written in India. It's almost 9 out of 10 times correct on that. But anyways, moving on from that, we are going to be moving on from the Khabarovsk and on into some more interesting news. Speaking of the Russians in Europe for the larger part, or should we more so say that we have to get to the major news of that little drone incursion that happened right over at the facility that houses our nuclear warheads in Europe. But we're going to move into that first and then cover the other big developments in Eastern Europe here in a second. We were able to hear earlier in the day today that for the second time this weekend, 3 large unidentified drones were spotted last night over the Kleine Brogel Air Base in Belgium, which houses F-16AM and BMs, with the 10th Tactical Wing of the Belgian Air Force and the B61 nuclear bombs maintained by the U.S. Air Force's 701st Munition Support Squadron. According to the Belgian Defense Ministry, the drones flew in a way which clearly suggested that they were targeting Kleine Brogel. A drone jammer was deployed but failed to disrupt the drones, while police and a helicopter tracked the drones but lost them several kilometers from Kleine Brogel. So it does appear that the Russian drones are continuing to fly over incredibly sensitive locations, including Kleine Brogel. Kleine Brogel is an air base that actually is within the northern area of Belgium. It's actually fairly close to the Dutch border. And I'm trying to see if I can find it for you all here really quickly. I found it earlier before we went on air, and now I'm having a hard time finding it again. So let me see here. Where in the world did I put that on the map? Because I put it right on the base. Okay, so it's near Pelt. We need to find Pelt. Ah, here we are. Oh, here it is. This is the base. It's been blurred out for security purposes, but beyond that, this is where our B61 gravity bombs are stationed, and these are pretty cool. This is a B61 gravity bomb. And gravity bomb sounds kind of a little wild. It's like, wow, what the hell does that thing do? Does it like create a gravity implosion? No, it's just a dumb bomb. It's just dropped and gravity brings it down onto its target. It's just basically a bomb, but it's a nuclear bomb. And these are pretty much our only tactical nuclear weapon inside of the United States, at least nowadays. Back in the day, we had all these cool little gadgets. This is the only one we have nowadays on the tactical level. But these are our tactical nuclear deterrent against the Russians in Europe. To explain this is an interesting thing that a lot of people also don't know about nuclear deterrence, is that there are actually several escalatory steps to nuclear warfare. Nuclear warfare does not mean that instantly everybody dies. There's actually a couple of steps leading up to everyone dying. So first off, there would be the diplomatic standoff like we're seeing right now. Then it would turn into a conventional war. Once one side or the other began to lose badly and they were losing a lot of ground, that's when it would first turn into a nuclear war. But it would not be one that would end up killing everyone immediately. It would end up being what would be called a tactical nuclear exchange, where tactical nuclear weapons of a much smaller size would be used against strategic locations of the front lines against enemy forces. This would generally be an attempt to try and destroy the larger logistics, communication, command hubs, and force buildups of the enemy wherever they were found. The other side would immediately start to retort by firing off their own tactical nuclear weapons at us or them, until both armies had pretty much exhausted their tactical nuclear weapon supply. Once that happened, they would then move on to either winning completely or getting to a ceasefire. If they don't get to a ceasefire, one side's going to get pretty much close to winning completely. And that's when either us, if we're losing, or them, if the Russians are losing, would fire off our strategic nuclear weapons. And then that's when they would also fire off theirs, or we'd fire off ours in return. And that's when everyone in the Northern Hemisphere, for the larger part, would end up getting killed, would be at that point. So there is an escalatory step to this. It's not just straight up endless destruction across the whole world immediately. And these nuclear weapons are a part of that escalatory step. It's pretty much the first step to nuclear warfare, is to use those. It does appear that drones continuously are flying over these in northern Belgium, and a lot of people are wondering who it would be. And also, Matthew, what are people thinking about that? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So we've actually seen a lot of drone sightings over many different areas inside of Europe, and they've not been reported on the way they used to be reported on. It seems like people have gotten very desensitized to drones showing up over European military bases, which is not a good thing, obviously, because this is a very big deal. This is still happening, but it seems like it's being brushed under the rug for some reason. But NATO did report today that large drones were spotted over nuclear bomb sites in Belgium. And what is going on? And it looks like 79% said it's got to be Russia, while 9% said it's probably China, and 3% said it seems like someone else. And actually, I'm going to be in the very small minority this time. I actually believe it's China. I'm with the 9% because NATO specifically reported they tried to jam these drones, and no jamming that NATO has was able to take these drones out of the sky or to repel them whatsoever. So, as far as we know, Russia does not possess any technology that can evade all of NATO's jamming technologies. We don't know of anything that Russia has that can do that. So, either China has given Russia some of their technology to use inside of Europe, or maybe China is launching these from ships off the coast and then sending them into Europe to do reconnaissance. It could be either one, but I just don't think Russia has that technology yet. They just don't have it. If they do have it, I would be very, very shocked. So I'm actually with the 9%. I think it is China. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would generally have to say I would be with the 78%. It's most likely the Russians. The Russians do have an ability to get these drones pretty far in. We've already seen them at Ramstein, which is a good bit farther away than this base even, and we would understand that those were launched from the area of the Baltic Sea. So I would say that it's fairly likely that these could be launched by the Russian Federation into the area, at least in my opinion, just due to the prior ranges that we have seen Russian drones before, and also have had that confirmed by German and U.S. authorities that the drones were in fact Russian. And now we're seeing these drones also showing up at other bases inside of Belgium and the Netherlands, at least I would assume at this point. So I would generally have to be with a 78% on that. But moving on from that, we also have some other major news that came out of Eastern Europe today that largely starts to lead credence to the idea that all of these aerospace incursions that are happening are definitely by design, either by the Russian government, the Belarusian government, the Chinese government, or someone. Lukashenko admitted today that the balloons that are flying over into Lithuania are pretty much an approved state action. According to Lukashenko, he confirmed that he is in contact with the smugglers trafficking cigarettes into Lithuania and admitted that his border committee does not oppose their actions. So it does appear that he pretty much just stated, yeah, we're in contact with these guys. They're pretty much working for the Belarusian government. And while he's looking like a guy who's trying to con you here out of $50, he's pretty much admitting that they're running a hybrid warfare campaign in the skies over Lithuania. Pretty crazy to admit that. You would think that they just go without admitting that, because now that makes them a legitimate target to be shot down at this point, although we don't really know if the Lithuanians would just decide to shoot them down or not. Still, fairly interesting development to hear. On top of that, Lithuania is still having to negotiate with the Russians about having their trains transit through to Kaliningrad. This is something that is absolutely stupid. I hate that the Lithuanians are in this situation, but it's one that they really can't avoid. Because of the collapse of the Soviet Union and how all of that went down, the Russian Federation ended up with the Kaliningrad Oblast detached from them. So to be able to keep Kaliningrad running, which it wouldn't really make a lot of sense to fly everything in, it would be too expensive, and also shipping everything in is a little bit difficult, so they have to keep up a land transportation corridor by road and by rail into Kaliningrad to keep it supplied. So, because of that, the Lithuanians got into a treaty way back then, during the collapse of the Soviet Union, with the Russians, that they would allow for the transit of Russian trucks and trains through their territory on specific railways and highways, not through the whole country, just on a specific railway and highway, to Kaliningrad and back to keep the oblast supplied. They're still in that treaty to this day. It's been modified a little bit, and they're still not on the very first treaty they made, which was in 1993, if I'm not mistaken. I believe they're currently on the 2019 treaty, if I'm not mistaken. But still, they're having to negotiate allowing for these Russian trains to pass through. It's a very unfortunate situation for Lithuania to be in, because they pretty much have to let them through. If they don't let them through, they're violating a treaty, which actually gives Russia a reason to go to war with them. But according to the publication that we were able to hear of today, the parties may soon agree on a shorter term for the new contract and an increased price for services. The European Commission has already been notified of the ongoing negotiations. It is not a good move, in my opinion, to allow this to continue to happen, but at the same time, it's a very tricky situation, because if the treaty is revoked, then that could also start a larger war. But very unfortunate nonetheless. But before we move on into the rest of our news, and really more so on into the Caribbean and East Asia and the Middle East, before we get to the Ukrainian frontline news here in a minute, I do want to say that the fundraiser has been doing wildly well tonight. We are only an hour in, and we've already raised about $2,000 for Nova Ukraine.
Wow.
That is truly insane. Actually, man, I was hoping that you'd go, damn, and say something more because I'm about to choke. But beyond that, it's absolutely unbelievable to see so many people once again supporting this fundraiser, of course, on our homecoming stream after being off for nearly an entire week. And also, Matthew, do you want to call off those top donors and let us know who all the amazing folks are?
Yes, indeed. So far, like the enforcer said, we are about to hit $2,000. We're only about $500 away from the goal. If you want to be really precise, we're about $525 away from hitting that goal. So very close. I'm only about an hour into the stream so far, so very good. And also, by the way, so far, our top donors of the night have been Don Edwards, who threw in a $250 donation, along with AJ, threw in a $135, and Frank the Tank USN, who threw in a $100, along with Hal Rose, who threw in a $100 as well, along with Tom S. and Activista, and also William Fialkowski, as well as a 50 from D Pink in 1966, and a 50 that just came in from Bobo Vasquez, as well as a 50 from Ron Anderson, Old Warrior Fella, as well as Rowdy Blindman, as well as John Combust, and Danny B. That is Chef Danny B, by the way, who also threw in a $50 donation. So a huge shout out to all of our top donors once again, and a huge shout out to everybody else that has thrown in that support of the fundraiser, because we're now sitting at $2,025 raised, and we're officially over the 2,000 mark, so getting really, really close to that goal. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, it's an absolutely amazing thing to see that so many people have once again supported our fundraiser tonight and are helping it to wildly get to the goal quickly. It's truly an amazing and incredible thing to see, and I've got to give y'all a massive shout out and appreciation to each and every one of y'all, the folks we were able to call off and the folks we weren't able to call off, because each and every single one of y'all are making a huge difference, not only here on this channel by watching this show, but also on the news that we're covering around the world and helping to save lives in places like Ukraine, where lives are at stake every single day. Y'all are making a huge impact there, and every little bit counts. So a humongous thanks to y'all so much once again. And Matthew, I also understand that we have a couple of questions from the folks out there in the audience, and well, I haven't been able to speak on any questions for about a week. So what do we got?
All right. So also by the way, to answer the question I just saw in the live chat, James White said, does YouTube take 30% from fundraising? And the answer is no. YouTube covers all processing fees when it comes to the fundraisers, and that's just for the fundraisers, by the way. They cover all those fees. So whatever you donate to the fundraiser, that is going straight to the charity from YouTube. So you don't have to worry about that with that. Now on Super Chats, that's another story, but on the fundraiser, that's not an issue. So just to answer that question and clear that up. But anyways, we are jumping right into our questions. And also, we actually got some super chats tonight, because for some reason we are still having super chats on the Sunday night fundraisers, but we're still nonetheless very appreciative for that generosity on the super chat side as well. But jumping into our first one, this one goes to Gator Fitz, who put in a $50 super chat. And thank you very much, Gator, for that support. He said, good luck in Salt Lake.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Gator Fitz. And we are really happy to be here in Salt Lake. It's a really cool place, actually. We've been really shocked by it. It's been so nice, and it's been so good. I will say this, though. I am a little bit miffed because I actually ended up getting, kind of like scammed in a way by a moving crew, which wasn't really the greatest way to start off being in Salt Lake, is to have a moving crew pretty much try and scam you. Well, they pretty much pulled that off successfully. So I wasn't really happy with that part. But beyond that, it's been a pretty good time here. It's gorgeous out here. There's beautiful mountains everywhere. It's like living in the Alps practically with the mountains. But the trip out here, folks, was crazy. I mean, it was absolutely insane. I was driving a 26-foot long Penske truck with, I think, what was it, Matthew, a 13-foot long car trailer?
Yeah, something like that. It was about that long.
Yeah, it was about like a 13-foot long car trailer attached to a 26-foot long moving van, and I drove that myself for 39 and a half hours all the way from Birmingham, Alabama to Salt Lake City. And that was hell on earth. my God, that truck was terrible. But that truck was also really fun because it made it into an adventure. It was like being on a wagon that the pioneers rode out into the West way back in the day with how like Spartan it was. But it was really cool. We ended up making it all the way across the country. And I got to tell y'all, folks, the road trip was crazy. Matthew, I don't think it would be that big of an OPSEC issue to tell folks where we went through now
Oh
at this
no, no,
point.
you can tell it. You can say everything about where we went. The only thing we got to keep under wraps at this point is our new location, the exact location. But everything else is fair game, pretty much.
Yeah, we took off from Birmingham, went down Interstate 22. So just doing this, folks, for posterity's sake, if you're on this route, give a big shout. We actually drove by y'all. So we drove down Interstate 22 from Birmingham through Tupelo and then into Memphis. We got lost in Memphis for a little bit, and then we ended up driving out of Memphis, and then up the interstate of Interstate 55 until we made it to Osceola. Then we figured out, oh shit, every hotel in Arkansas is booked up and there's nowhere to stay. So then we had to drive another 2 hours up the road. By the way, folks, at this point, it's 12 o'clock in the morning when we found that out. Well, not 12 o'clock in the morning, it's 12 o'clock midnight when we found that out at Osceola. So we had to drive all the way up the Interstate 55 to Sykeston, and then we stayed at a hotel here. Then we got back on Interstate 55, and we went all the way up it, all the way to the beautiful and amazing and fantastic city of St. Louis. And take everything that I just said about it and flip that on its head, because St. Louis is truly like Birmingham, Alabama is like rough, but it's not like that bad. St. Louis, or St. Louis, however you want to call it, that place is true. I don't think God has ever looked down at those people in forever, because it's terrible through there, and also people don't know how to drive there. I'm driving a moving van, folks, with a car trailer, and there would be people like whipping out in front of me, and this happened like 50 times just getting through St. Louis. But they would whip out in front of me and then just slam on the brakes like I can just do that easy. So we finally made it through there. Then we drove all the way across Missouri, literally from east to west on Interstate 70 to Kansas City. Then we turned and we went up Interstate 29 all the way up to Nebraska City, and then we drove this little highway here through Nebraska City to Lincoln, and then we drove all the way down Interstate 80 to the town of North Platte, which I didn't know this at the time. I would have known this if I wasn't so exhausted, but it was really kind of cool that we stayed in North Platte because the largest rail yard in the world is here, the Union Pacific Bailey Yard. We didn't get to see it. I didn't get to see it, but we were only 2 miles away from it, which was really cool. But that was the biggest rail yard in the planet, and we were only 2 miles away from it. Then we drove down Interstate 80 the next day, all the way into Cheyenne, Wyoming, and then we drove all the way to Green River. That's where we stayed at a hotel again. Green River was pretty neat, actually. But then we woke up the next day after that, and then we drove from Green River all the way down into Salt Lake City. And then we started to move in. So it was a one hell of a trip, and there were actually a couple of moments where the truck almost flipped over in Wyoming because the winds are so strong there that they can blow a truck over. So that's actually a really cool story in itself. So once you get past Cheyenne to the west of it on Interstate 80, you're in this area called the Sherman Hill, which is famous in the railroading world, but a lot of people wouldn't know of it outside of that. But it's the beginning of the Cheyenne Plain, which is where there are loads of winds. Pretty much to explain this in literally the only way that it can be explained, if dang. If you look at this, I sound like a kid in a coal mine, folks. I got that miner's lung. But beyond that, if you look at this map here, and you look at the mountain ranges to the north and the south, you'll notice that there's this giant stretch that has no mountains in it right here, where the interstate goes through. This area funnels all of the wind from hundreds of miles around right through it. So the winds get up in there from 75 miles an hour to 40 miles an hour pretty much every day. So you can flip over a moving van pretty quickly. And at one point, I was on the phone with Matthew and I was telling him that it was like piloting the Edmund Fitzgerald through heavy seas. Like I was kidding with him. I was like going, "Yar, it be heavy seas." And I was like, "Oh, hang up. I gotta hang up." I hung up, and right when I did that, a gust hit it on the left side and it lifted the truck up on its left side a couple of inches and it almost flipped over. And so that was insane. I was like, "Oh my God."
Also, the sign said something about extreme blowover risk or something. It says something wild like that on it. So honestly, like that was sketchy. That was really sketchy because the truck's obviously high profile, like it's very high. But at the same time, we had it weighted down a lot with a lot of stuff, so it added to the weight of the truck. So technically, the truck wasn't a lightweight vehicle, so you could drive it down that way anyway. But at the same time, though, I looked behind me in the rearview mirror because I drove the whole way in my car, and the enforcer was towing his car behind the Penske. And I looked in the rearview mirror and I saw the truck sidewinding. Like the front of the truck was like pointing toward the other lane, and the back of the truck was like at the white line off the side of the road. And I was like, oh my God, I think the thing's about to flip. But thankfully, it didn't flip. It just got really, really sideways going down the interstate. So we had to slow down to like 50 or 60 miles an hour the whole way to keep moving because there was nowhere else to go. We couldn't just stop because, there's nowhere to stop. And then number two, we couldn't just take another route because there was no other route to take. We were already dedicated to the Wyoming route. So yeah, honestly, that was sketchy as hell. I'm glad the truck did not flip, or otherwise all of our stuff would have been gone. The enforcer would have probably been mortally injured at that point. And so that was interesting. I was honestly sweating bullets for like a solid like 100 miles.
And you know what's crazy? Matthew's sweating bullets while he's driving his own car. I'm sweating bullets in the actual van that's about to flip over. I was sitting there, folks. That was a real clenching moment right there. Like, if I had crapped myself at that very moment when the truck was about to flip over, it would have come out as diamonds from how stressed out and clenched up I was from not wanting the truck to flip over. And it was not in, like, the middle of the nicest spot to flip over. I mean, if you remember, Matthew, like, the interstate was, like, built up on a berm in this area, and it was like a 100-foot drop off of the berm. Like, it was a pretty steep grade on both sides. Yeah. I was like, I don't want to flip over right here. This thing's going to go like 100 feet down into this ravine that's on both sides of the interstate with no guardrails or anything.
Yeah, honestly, I would say the whole time I was looking in the rearview mirror, I was also trying to dodge these semi trucks that were going by. I don't know what the deal is. I guess maybe the semi truck drivers are trying to get the hell out of the windy area really quick or something. But the semi truck drivers out there in that windy area, they were going, I don't know how fast they were going, like 80 miles an hour or higher or something. They were hauling ass through there, and they were going around corners like drifting these semi trucks with trailers, like they were just going berserk. I was like, what the hell is going on with this? And in the meantime, I'm looking behind me, and Andrew's back there basically drifting the Penske truck in the wind. Not literally drifting it, by the way, but the wind's like drifting it for him. And I was like, oh, dang, if that thing flips, I don't know what we're going to do out here in the middle of nowhere. Because also the cell signal's not good out there either. You basically don't have any cell signal. So you're pretty much on your own. Like, if you flip it, you're just kind of screwed at that point, which is, if I'd have known that ahead of time, we might have picked a different route, but we really didn't know that coming up to it.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you looked at Matthew's car, it seemed like a way more enjoyable experience, and that's what I would just assume because I never got to drive a car the whole trip. But meanwhile, if you looked back at me, it was like eastbound and down, but bass boosted the whole time. And also, the damn truck shook so much. Like, the Penske trucks are, like, they got the job done. I will say that. The engine never gave out, but they shake so much all the time. Like, it doesn't matter what speed you're going. It's like riding one of those bucking bronco rides at the fair where it's like trying to fling you off. It's doing that to you the whole time that you're in the seat. So I'm getting flung around everywhere like 16 hours a day in this truck. And so it's a physical exercise just to keep upright and keep looking forward. And so my legs are absolutely shattered from that. Like, I guess that's what they're like shattered from. Because like every time I move my legs now, I can feel like the nerves and arteries in my legs almost like ripping apart from how exhausted my legs are from trying to hold myself up in the upright position. And the truck was so loud.
If you think that was bad, though, I mean, I drove a Lotta for 2,000 miles across country in front or behind the Penske truck, depending on where it was. Drove the Lotta all the way across the country to Salt Lake City. My legs were shot. Like, I was literally, I'm not in too bad a shape, but my legs were absolutely shot. My back was shot. I felt like I'd aged about 40 years by the time I got out of the car. Now, I will admit this. The road trip was interesting from a standpoint of being able to see like a different part of the country. Like, we obviously drove through Nebraska. That was very interesting. I drove through, I'll be honest with you, Missouri was not interesting. I didn't like Missouri at all. I was not a huge fan of that state. Sorry if you live there, by the way, but I was not a huge fan of Missouri. It reminded me of Alabama a lot, which we were trying to leave. So once you got past Missouri and into Nebraska and the Midwest and then on to like Utah and Wyoming, it turned really nice. Like, I really liked it. I like the plains area. I like the people out there. there. The people instantly turned more friendly. So I personally liked seeing most of it. But I'll be honest though, getting lost in Memphis, that was not a good thing. We got lost in the really bad hood
We got
part
lost
of
in
Memphis.
gangland. We
Yeah, we
literally
got lost
got
in
lost
gangland.
in
We saw
gangland.
the working ladies were out there, the pimps were out there. I mean, it was a scene, and we drove straight through the middle of it at night. So literally the worst time to drive through there. But
Oh,
we got out of there safely. Honestly, that might have been sketchier than the wind was going through Memphis.
oh man, and y'all like Memphis. Goodness gracious, Memphis was like the stereotype of what you would imagine Memphis to be. Like all of the nail salons. If y'all don't know this, in like I know that this is a really big thing in the South, but I don't know about this the rest of the country. There are some nail salons that are not nail salons in most of the South, and they operate as like gambling joints in a sense. So they're usually open at really late times of the night, and there were loads of them that were open. And I was like, oh my god, I was like, that is crazy. Like I've seen a couple of them in Birmingham, but they were all over the place in Memphis. And there were like the working women of the night out there, and like it was questionable. It was very, very questionable going through Memphis. It was literally like what the documentaries would make it out to be. Like I've been in places like Portland and Seattle, and I'll be honest with you all, the hype that they give to those places saying that it's really bad, it's not that bad, but Memphis is as bad as people make it out to be. Like that place is actually pretty bad off. St. Louis is as well. Like St. Louis is really rough. However, I will say this though for the Missourians here in the chat tonight, Kansas City is goated. Kansas City is a really cool place. I like Kansas City, but I do not like St. Louis. I can't even mince words with that. St. Louis and Memphis are terrible places. But beyond that, Memphis was absolutely terrible, and we got stuck in like we took a wrong turn, and then also I had to pull over at a way station. So Matthew lost me. So then we both ended up getting stuck, lost, not knowing where each other really is, in the middle of gangland in Memphis. In the middle of the night, by the way, it was like 11, I think, at that point. So that was kind of scary, but not really, because I knew I would talk my way out of it. Like I'm just kidding, I would get shot, but I was gonna try and talk my way out of it if I could. But that was what that was. Let's see, where else? Man, actually, crazily enough, thinking about it, we actually drove all the way from Sykeston all the way out of there to North Platte in that one day. That's actually kind of crazy now that I think back about that. Because
Yeah, we're driving about 60 to 65 the whole way. So I mean, it's not very fast either. So these were some long driving days, by the way. We were pushing it like on these days. I think that day we drove like 14 hours.
Yeah, well, actually, I think that was the day that we drove 16, if I'm not mistaken. Let me see here. Let me measure that out. How many miles was that in a single day? Let's see here. I'm interested in this one, folks, and hopefully y'all are interested as well, because we're gonna get to the bottom of this. How many miles would this be? And this is a very rough approximation, but we're gonna find out for all the folks back at home. And also, we have to remember, Matthew, that we took that detour accidentally into Kansas and then back because we took another wrong turn, folks, in Kansas City. And then we go through here, and then we go up here, and then we go all the way up to Missouri. We actually got to see pretty much the whole of Missouri. Like, if you look at this route, we literally drove around the whole of Missouri, which was really crazy.
Honestly, man, I hate to bash a state. I hate to do it, but if you're in Missouri, I'm sure there's nice parts of Missouri, just like there's nice parts of everywhere. But it seemed like everywhere we drove in Missouri, it looked like misery. Like it really looked like misery everywhere we drove. I did not like Missouri at all. I didn't care for it.
Missouri had some cool places, folks. Matthew didn't like it much. I actually thought some parts of it were pretty neat, like this area around the Mark Twain National Forest. That actually I thought was really pretty. The only part I did not like was the St. Louis area and mostly everything in between there and Columbia. After that, everything generally turned out to be fine. I didn't really find that much wrong with the state. But the St. Louis area, that was pretty bad. And then the Mark Twain National Forest area in Kansas City, I thought they were pretty okay. And also I saw a Norfolk Southern train out there, like pretty much pacing us. So I thought that was pretty cool. So that gave it some bonus points. But let's see, Matthew, we're almost to North Platte here. Dang, dude, in that one day we drove 800 miles.
That's insane. I think at that point I was getting delirious at that point. I remember driving into, I can't remember where it was. It was driving into somewhere one night, and I felt like I was out of my mind. Like at that point, like I know Andrew was back there driving the Penske, feeling like he was probably out of his mind. But we were driving to the last place. Honestly, I can't hardly remember that hardly at all. Like I think I was so out of it at that point, I couldn't really recall what even happened. But I remember I could have slept on a 2x4, like a wood board at that point. And I wouldn't have known I was sleeping on a wood board. I was so tired.
Yeah, something that I was just thinking, someone said this in the chat. Uh, let's see here. Let's see. Let's see. Someone said in San Francisco they rob your car when you leave it. In Memphis they shoot you and drive off, no motive whatsoever. It kind of is like that. Like that's it. Well, we wouldn't know. I mean, we just passed through there, but it felt like that for sure. I mean, Memphis was a rough and tough place. I mean, you had to be from like the salty spittoon to make it out of there alive. If you were, like caught in the broad daylight or anything in there. Memphis was crazy rough. St. Louis, it's about the same, I would say. I see a lot of people from Missouri agreeing with us that St. Louis sucks. So I'm glad to know that everyone's in agreement on that. And also, wait a minute, did we just hit the goal? Hey, we just hit
Did
the
we?
goal!
Hey, we hit the goal. Hey, Jugga Jugga Eagle. Let's
Hey!
go. We hit the goal. Hey, let's see if that's gonna get evicted.
Hey!
Hey.
I would do it louder,
honestly,
but I'm gonna
honestly,
choke.
I'm hoping, man. I'm hoping that the walls are good in this place. I'm hoping they are because if they're not good, I'll probably find out after that one. But that is fantastic, by the way. $4 over goal. Look at that right now.
Man, look at that. Magical. Magical. Truly magical. I love to see it, folks. And I got to give a big shout out to all of y'all once again because y'all have all helped us to hit another fundraiser goal here for another great fundraiser, Nova Ukraine. But still, a massive thanks to all of y'all so much once again for supporting the fundraiser tonight, big and small, because every single one of y'all have come together to make a big difference here in the Lee Spring Army, and not only that, around the entirety of the world. And so, with that, folks, enough about our road trip. I'm sure many people are going to be asking about that through the rest of the night. We'll just leave all the tidbits for the
Oh,
rest of the night. Oh,
one last thing, by the way. What's fascinating is the entire trip. No encounters at all with law enforcement. The entire trip, no pullovers, nothing like that. Until I got to Utah, that was the only place I thought I was actually going to get pulled over for whatever reason. I wasn't speeding or anything like that. Definitely not speeding. In fact, I was going under the speed limit the whole time because I was following the Penske. But I remember the moment I crossed into Utah, the Utah State Trooper got behind me and literally followed me for 20 miles. Came up beside the car, went behind it, came up beside it again, and followed me for 20 miles. I was like, what the hell? I was like, I think he was running my tag or something. He saw us from Alabama and was like, what's this guy doing from Alabama all the way over here in Utah? So, luckily he didn't get pulled over or anything, but he drove on after like 20 miles. But I was sitting there thinking for like 20 miles straight, like, is this guy about to pull me over and for what reason? It's like, geez, but it was the only time that happened was right when I crossed over into Utah. And then after that, it was all smooth sailing from there.
oh, and also Robert Moore said, "Enforcer, tell me it's an apartment without telling me it's an apartment." LOL. It's funny. A lot of people always think that we're like raking in millions doing this, so a lot of people think that we ought to be like living in mansions and stuff. We don't really make that much doing this, like compared to what a lot of people think we make. Like it's a good living, but it's nothing that's going to be buying you a mansion or anything like that, or even a house these days in this economy. So we're pretty much like in basically like apartments, townhomes, condominiums sort of stuff. That's what we're based out of. So anyways, with that, you're pretty much dead on the nail. That was probably the best way for us to say that without saying it. But also, let's see. There was one other thing. Someone said, "Oh, Salt Lake City is a nice place." Oh yeah, you bet. Like Salt Lake, like it was worth it. Like the whole trip and like the torture of the road trip, it was worth it because Salt Lake City is very nice. All the people out here are incredibly nice. The only people I have not run into that were not nice were the moving crew folks that I had. But that's a whole other story for a whole other time. But beyond that, I will say it was definitely worth it. And y'all, folks, I got to tell y'all, coming from the South to a place like Salt Lake, it's crazy. Like something that's blown us away, folks, just to let y'all know, is that people actually say hello out here. That never happens in Alabama. Like when you walk by someone in Alabama, they'll literally look the other way, stick their nose up in the air, and pretend like they're too good to talk to you, or they don't even know that you're there. That's how everyone does it in the South. Nobody says hello to anyone. Out here, we went walking through a public park just to kind of stretch our legs for a minute, and we walked by maybe 5 people, and all 5 of them said hello when we walked by, and they initiated the hello. And so we were like, whoa, that is so crazy. Like, people are so polite out here to just say hello to people they don't even know. That was cool to us. Like, that was really cool. And so far, I haven't run into, except for the movers, anyone who's rude out here. Everyone's super, super nice, like insanely nice. Utah nice, I think is what they call it. And also, one other thing, folks, I have to tell you all this. We did stop on the way in at this little place right here, the Echo Canyon Welcome Center. This area.
Ah, yeah, very, very, very interesting. Also, by the way, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to say this real quick before I forget. I did promise y'all a video, a marmot.
That's a groundhog.
Oh, well, dang. I thought it was a Mario. It looked like Mario there for a minute. But anyways, I did promise y'all a travel video, by the way. I did make recordings, even in my delirious state. I'll be honest with you, I look like a complete wreck. And also, I think Andrew looked like a wreck in the video, too. But it's a raw video, though. It's straight up raw from the trip. So you'll get to see literally us exhausted in the thing. So I'm planning on editing that thing starting tomorrow and then getting it out. I would have had it edited before now, but sadly, I've been trying to unbox stuff for a long time. So I've been super swamped trying to get that stuff done. But we are going to release that video. It's going to go on Patreon first, and then we'll show it on the stream after that. So it'll be an interesting video. I did take some video of the Penske truck driving. I think I got some video of the thing in the wind too. So you get to see sort of what was happening with that. So it was a whole thing. So y'all get to see most of the trip, or at least pieces of it from here and there.
Yeah, I didn't even get to record anything. Also, by the way, that was another thing, folks. The truck had a mind of its own, so whenever I wasn't holding the wheel with 2 hands, the truck would just decide to do whatever. So I wasn't ever able to do anything other than drive the truck and pay attention to staying in the lane, because any deviation in attention, the truck would just try and kill me. So I had to pay attention the whole time. So that was another thing, by the way, that I never got to record anything the whole trip. So everything's going to be from Matthew's perspective, not mine, because I was in the Penske. But we made it to this little rest stop here, and this is the last thing I'm going to add in before we move on from this. And when we were driving down the canyon, of course, y'all know I'm a huge, like, train guy. I like trains. So we were coming down here, and I played Train Simulator, so I know the Wasatch Grade. And on Train Simulator, I like the Wasatch Grade. It goes from Ogden to Evanston, right along Interstate 84. Interstate 84 was actually built to follow that main line through this area, because it was the easiest way to get out of here. So when we were coming down from Evanston, I was like, oh my god, this is the train sim route I played. This is so cool. So we made it here, and by the time we had made it here, we had just passed, going down the canyon at the same time, a Union Pacific train that was also coming down. So we made it here, and there was a hill that was right there, and this is deceptive looking. I'll tell you about this in a second. We made it here, and I was like, oh my god, Matthew, there's a train coming down. Let's try and take some pictures. In 1 minute, we made it to the top of this hill. This hill right here looks small. That hill is 250 feet tall. So we scaled a 250-foot tall hill in like, it was like less than a minute. It was quick. We snapped the pictures, and then we looked down, and the trail is so steep, like you can bust your ass easy on this thing trying to get back down. Here we go. This is actually what it looks like from up here. So you can actually see how far up you are compared to the 18-wheelers and stuff down there. So we were like, dang, we got to get back down. But we actually were up on this very hill in this very spot, taking pictures and stuff. And so then we had to meander back down this hill, almost ended up slipping. But it was really cool, and this place is gorgeous. I mean, look at it. It's really an impressive spot. But the whole drive after this, the whole drive in was super nice. Like, let me get you all around to here to show you all this little area, hopefully. Oh yeah, this kind of looks like it did when we drove in. Although it kind of looks drier. It was greener when we came in, but this was a beautiful area. A beautiful area. Let me see if I can get y'all. Yeah, this is exactly what it looked like when we drove in. It was all green out here. It was so pretty. It was like driving through the Alps. But anyways, folks, enough of that. We've been answering one question now for like 20-something minutes. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope that we've divulged as much about the road trip as we can, at least for now. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. So our next super chat goes to Craig Jones, and Craig put in a very generous $100 super chat in total. And thank you very much, Craig, for that very generous
Hey!
support right there and throwing that in on Sunday of all nights. And we do appreciate that support. And once again, helping to keep the channel running with that support. But Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you massively for the support. It is folks like you who help to keep this channel running and make this thing possible, and we're massively appreciative of your support in helping us to make the Enforcer channel a reality and a living possibility. So a humongous thanks to you so much once again. You did throw in massive support without a comment, which we're still greatly appreciative of. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be getting back into the news.
And this one's going to go to Old Warrior Fella, who puts in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Old Warrior, for that support once again. He said, welcome back. And that new Russian nuke-powered missile is a pig with lipstick, not even supersonic. And take one from the chat.
Hey, don't talk about Lavrov's mother that way. Like, give her some respect. Thank you so much in support, Old Warrior. I would agree with you. That Burevestnik is a joke. Everything that Russia is making nowadays in the nuclear arms industry is a complete joke. I don't understand any of it, the concept behind it, or how it's supposed to be viable. It's all pointless. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep running, and I hope that has addressed that incredibly well, Old Warrior. And so with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the rest of our news for the night. Also, by the way, folks, one more thing I have to clear up before we move on. A lot of people are like, dang, so the show's going to start an hour earlier because y'all are in Salt Lake? No. It started an hour earlier today for most of our international viewers because of daylight savings time. It's this really obsolete thing that we have going on in America that was supposed to help out the farmers, where we roll the clock back at the beginning of the fall, well, right now, to help out the farmers to be able to get up earlier, and then we roll it forward in the spring next year. I don't know why we do it anymore. It's completely pointless, and I also don't understand how that helps out the farmers, because it's like, you know, if they just need to set their clocks earlier, why don't they do that instead of having the whole country flip their clocks back? For some reason, I just don't get it. But that's why the show started an hour earlier today, is because we're just running off of whatever is 10 p.m. Eastern time, American time. So when daylight savings time happens and it flips us an hour back, we just start the stream an hour early. So I hope that explains that well. But we're still going to be starting at the same time, every day. It's going to be 10 p.m. Eastern time, and that's the time that we actually started the show tonight. But moving on. Also, another crazy thing. I got to add this into y'all. Another crazy thing, folks, is that the show started so late in Alabama that when we would get off air on tonight, like a fundraiser night, we usually expect these to be 2.5 hours long. We would usually end the show at 11:30. Here in Salt Lake time, which is Mountain time, we're actually going to be starting the stream tonight at 10:30. Which is another huge benefit of moving here, is that we kind of get to have a more normal life where we get to get up in the day and actually do stuff. Because it got to the point that it was almost impossible to do really anything in Alabama because of the kind of insane schedule that we had, where we were pretty much up and awake literally through the night hours every day, and then we were pretty much sleeping through the daytime every day. So that's a huge benefit for us moving out here, is the time zone difference. And also, I don't know, maybe one day we'll end up moving to a place like California to really take advantage of that. And then we'll also go broke because of the insane cost of living in California. But anyways,
By the way, we do need to grab a live chat for Old Warrior super chat right there. And once again, a huge shout out to Old Warrior for that super chat support. And to get that one from the live chat, this one is going to go to Ride for Life, who said pro-Wagner means anti-Putin, and maybe some resistance is coming soon to Russia, and that's why they're flying that flag.
That's what I was kind of thinking. That's a good point. That's a possibility. But at the same time, I don't know if they would want to show that off in the Russian border guards at Estonia. Because if Estonia points that out to the Russian government, they're going to find those border guards, hold them responsible, and, put them in prison. So I don't really know if they would want to do that, at least those border guard guys. Because if they're wanting to show some form of resistance, that might not be the best way to do it and also stay out of prison. But still, I hope that does address that the best that I possibly can. And a big thanks to Old Warrior for sponsoring a live chat and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who have helped to make this thing possible and helped to keep on rolling for many a year. And so with that, folks, it is time for us to move on into the rest of the news for the night. And we have been able to hear inside of the Eastern Caribbean. And also, folks, by the way, I'm going to be speeding up the news a little bit, because not only was that question segment quite long, but also my vocal cords really won't be able to take too much more of this. So I'm going to be speeding it up a little bit, but we'll still be covering all the news like normal. So moving on down into the Eastern Caribbean, we were able to hear that the United States of America is continuing to fly C-17s into the area of Roosevelt Roads to continue to build up our base infrastructure and abilities within Puerto Rico. Inside of Roosevelt Roads in Puerto Rico, we have been able to see that significant improvements have been made to the airbase structures around the area, including the improvement of a taxiway, which has been greatly lengthened near to the area of the operational runways at Roosevelt Roads, which would support higher capacity air operations. More importantly, we've also been able to see the additions, or more so the add-ons, of mobile aircraft arresting systems and tactical air navigation beacons at the former Roosevelt Roads Naval Station in Ceiba, Puerto Rico, and it does appear that these are once again going to be supporting high-tempo operations. We've also been able to see that tents have been set up as temporary occupations for U.S. Armed Forces and troops that are within the area, once again suggesting that they may be moving here in a while into some form of a permanent basing, as operations against Venezuela appear to still be inevitable at this point. U.S. forces are also undergoing jungle training inside of the area of Panama, which we can see right here. We could see them doing jungle stuff, walking around jungle buildings, aiming jungle guns, and walking through jungle woods.
I tell you what, this is that environment right here that reminds you somewhat of Vietnam to a certain degree. And this is the type of stuff right here that I look at and think, dude, does the United States really want to get back in an environment like that fighting? Probably not. But, I'm not really sure if they're going to go for it. Invasion or aerial strikes is still up for debate.
I'm not going to lie, man. You know what this place reminds me of?
What's that?
Like Florida or lower Alabama.
Not lower Alabama, I would say. Maybe the very southern end of Florida, like near the swampy area, possibly, like near the Everglades. But I don't know. This looks like a hellish environment to fight in right here. This like really jungle wet environment, just awful.
I mean, it does look pretty damn bad. I'm not going to lie. I mean, but beyond that, we also were able to hear that the USS Gerlad R Ford is still on the way, and it's only made it to Sicily, so it's a good bit away at this point, and it's still making steam towards the area of the Eastern Caribbean. In the meantime, Venezuela is trying to reach out and get help from anyone at this point, and is trying to see if Russia, China, or Iran will help them out and trying to at least arm them so that way they can defend the country a little bit more. I don't know if that's going to be answered. A lot of people are probably going to try and avoid this, but that is the current ongoing situation with us at this point. And also, a lot of people are talking about the Russian military aircraft that did land in Venezuela today, which may be a sign that Russia might be willing to help, but, that still might be taking a lot out of nothing. But beyond that, Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so just to give you all some backstory real quick, Maduro has been reaching out to all of his perceived allies. He's been reaching out to Iran, he's been reaching out to, I believe, North Korea, and also definitely China, and also definitely Russia. So he's been reaching out and pleading to pretty much everybody he can get his hands on and burn the phone lines down to get them to come over and help defend Venezuela in case the U.S. actually attacks them. So we did see that it looked like 1 or 2 Russian military aircraft actually landed in Venezuela a day ago. And some people were saying it was carrying maybe Wagner soldiers, which I really doubt that because Wagner doesn't really exist anymore, or it was carrying military supplies to the Maduro regime. So is Russia planning on confronting the United States? Because we have heard some very, very jagged statements coming out of the Kremlin that Russia might actually try to defend Venezuela in some form or another. So 47% of the audience said no, Russia would not defend them, and Russia is simply posturing, while 33% said they'd probably only give military supplies only to Venezuela and not actually militarily defend the island or the area. And 15% said yes, Russia will defend Venezuela. So for me personally, I don't see Russia getting bogged down defending Venezuela. I don't see China doing that either. What they'll probably do is the same thing that the United States is doing with Ukraine. They'll simply send weapons to Venezuela and basically hope and pray for the best, which is not going to be very good for Maduro because that leaves him pretty much high and dry at that point still. So in my opinion, If the U.S. does follow through with its plans to attack, Maduro will likely be ousted in probably a very short amount of time, and then Venezuela is going to be a shit show beyond that point. So I don't think Russia is going to defend them. They really don't have the ability to defend at this point because they need all the manpower they can get inside of Ukraine and elsewhere. So I'm with the 47%. It seems like posturing, pretty much like everything else Russia's doing at this point. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say it's more so posturing. Russia has no ability to supply, support, or maintain any sort of sustained operations or any equipment or supplies that would be provided to Venezuela or any sort of significant or meaningful training just due to their lack of a logistical capability or an ability to conduct any sort of global power projection. So for those reasons alone, even if they had the resources in Russia to be able to help, they have no way to get those resources sufficiently to Venezuela at any sort of a sustainable rate, period, or even be able to protect it or train anyone in Venezuela how to use it. So I would generally say that this is solely posturing, and it may have even been a diplomatic envoy that was on the plane instead of an actual bit of military equipment or any sort of military help. But moving on from that and on out of the Eastern Caribbean, we did get to hear, at least in Washington, D.C. today, a couple of interesting developments. The president stated that we have a secret plan for Venezuela. Let's see what happens. Great to hear that we have a secret plan. In the meantime, we also were able to hear that the United States is now possibly considering sending U.S. troops into Nigeria. Now, that seems like a little bit of a twist. Why the hell would U.S. troops go into Nigeria? Well, that's a great question. I will explain to y'all really quickly what the justification is and also actually what's going on in Nigeria. If y'all do not know, Nigeria is actually one of the more economically prosperous and rapidly growing countries within all of Africa currently. If we go and look at their GDP, let me go and show this to y'all right here. GDP. Oh, actually, sorry, correction, everyone. It's actually plummeted over the last year. Whoopsie daisy. I actually thought they were still doing quite well. It looks like they're now doing about as badly as Kenya. Sometimes you break a couple of eggs to make an omelet. Nevertheless, Nigeria once was one of the most rapidly growing economic states or markets within Africa. Recently, I suppose because of the economic collapse, a great deal of instability has started to grip the country. There is a significant Christian population that exists within Nigeria. And we don't talk religion on this channel, but religion actually plays a pretty big part in what's going on down there right now, and also why the US would possibly get involved. So, there's a significant Christian population in Nigeria, but there's also an equally significant Islamic population inside of Nigeria. I'm sure many of y'all can see where this is going. So, the Christians and the Islamic groups inside of Nigeria really don't like each other too much, but recently the Islamic groups have taken it upon themselves, at least within northern Nigeria, to go around and quite literally conduct a genocide. There's been loads of videos coming out on the internet. I've seen a good amount of them, of hundreds and thousands in individual incidents, multiple individual incidents, of Christian Nigerians being genocided by these Islamic militant groups because they are Christians. Pretty much an ethnic cleansing or genocide, a religious genocide that is going on inside of Nigeria. Unfortunately, to say this is nothing new for Africa, especially this area of Central Africa. There have been endless amounts of genocides that have gone on throughout the entirety of the Central African region over the past few decades. Many of y'all will know of the Rwandan genocides, the Ugandan genocides, the genocides in South Sudan, the ongoing civil war and genocides in Sudan, the ongoing civil wars and actual cannibalistic warlords of the Democratic People's Republic of the Congo and the Central African Republic, the warlords of Cameroon, the warlords of Nigeria, the ongoing warlords and lawlessness that's existed for decades in Liberia. This is nothing entirely new, but it is something that is brand new, at least in terms of this one being a recent development. So the United States, or at least the President of the United States, has stated that the Nigerian government needs to immediately get a grip on the situation and stop the genocide of the Christian Nigerians. Otherwise, the U.S. is going to get involved. So an interesting sort of a claim. I've got to say, it's a nice moralistic premise to go in there and want to stop a genocide, but at the same time, though, there are a lot of other genocides going on throughout Africa right now. Like I just got to say it's a little bit weird that this one's being prioritized because there are a lot of them. I mean, if we wanted to get involved in trying to police these sorts of situations, there's an endless amount of them. For one, Liberia is in an endless state of anarchy. We could go in there and help them out with that because that isn't a genocide. People are just dying every day there because they're getting randomly killed in the hundreds and thousands. We could go in and deal with the situations that are going on in South Sudan. We could go in and deal with the situations in Sudan. I mean, Sudan is probably the worst at the moment right now, well beyond Nigeria even. So, if we wanted to get involved in any of these, on a moralistic premise, it's not a bad idea. But on the same end, I just don't really understand why in the world the Nigerian one's really catching all of our attention right now. And also, on top of that, I got to say another thing here. I thought the whole idea of the current administration is that we weren't going to be getting involved in foreign affairs around the world. Now we're going to get involved in
Yeah.
genocides happening in the middle of Central Africa that really, like, as far as the strategic impact, it doesn't impact the United States, but now we're going to get involved, and I don't even really know why, to be entirely honest.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering too. When you were saying all this and speaking of Nigeria, I was like, "Oh, obviously it's terrible what's happening there." I mean, I've seen the videos myself as well. It's absolutely awful what's happening there. But at the same time, though, wasn't the argument just a few like months ago that we really can't help out Ukraine that much because we need to prioritize America? But yet at the same time, we're going down to Venezuela to go start a war. We're about to head over to Nigeria to start a war, and we're going pretty much everywhere except the one place we need to focus on, which is Ukraine at this point. So I don't know. Like it seems like the wars are breaking out pretty fast right now. And it seems like wars generally that we shouldn't even be involved in for the most part as America. We can't be everybody's police. Like this is not possible. Like I understand we have to obviously project power, but we can't go around getting involved in small skirmishes here, there, and yonder, or we're going to be stretched too thin when something serious does break out in Europe or in Asia.
Yeah, I don't really know. And also on top of that, another thing is if we're against like this is something else like this stuff I just gotta say folks, I'm not getting political here, but I just gotta point out stuff that doesn't make sense to me. So we're all for stopping the genocide of Christians in Nigeria, but when al-Jawlani's government and the Syrian interim government just went and genocided Christians in Homs a while ago, and also the Alawite Arabs and the Druze in southern Syria, which are generally Christians, we didn't bat an eye then. As a matter of fact, we're chumming up to al-Jawlani. So we had no problem with the genociding or murder of innocent Christian lives in Syria just 2 months ago then. But when it comes to Nigeria, now we have a problem with it. I don't really understand that because there isn't consistency in the moral application of this at all. Like if we want to, like, one, I don't really think the United States is the defender of the Christian faith. The United States of America and its government officially, according to the First Amendment, cannot recognize or elevate any religion over another. Regardless whether you like that idea or not, that is the law. However, if we are supposed to be this defender of the Christian faith for some reason, why in the world is that being so lackadaisically applied where we'll become friends with a guy who was going around killing Christians? We know that in Syria a while ago, but then we'll also put down our foot with what's going on in Nigeria. I don't really know. Mhm.
I don't think it's about religion at all. The U.S. never does anything militarily over religious reasons. That may be a cover story, but in geopolitics, you don't get caught up in like whose religion is what, etc. It's simply U.S. interest versus the other country's interest. That's what it boils down to. So whenever I hear people saying, like in the government, they say, "Oh, well, it's about this particular type of religion that's getting persecuted. We're going to go to save that one." It's like it's not really about that one. It's more about some other reason that we're really going there. I see some people saying oil. I mean, I'm not that bad of a pessimist, but at the same time though, I'm also a realist. We're probably going there for some other material reason other than to save that one religion. It's probably something much more I guess you say pragmatic than that reason. It's probably not what they're saying.
Yeah, I would assume so. That's probably the high likelihood. But at the same time, considering that it actually looks like we're going into Venezuela to fight the cartels at this point, it's not even to curb Chinese influence. I mean, this might actually be as straightforward as it's being said. It might actually be to go in there and stop this genocide, which I just, I'm not really getting it because like I just got to say, folks, the whole thing these days is so weird with how that's applied. Like this whole thing is applied ambiguously and not even evenly by anyone anymore. Like if you like they're saying that there's a genocide going on in Nigeria, which there is, but there's also one going on in Sudan, and there's one going on in China. There's dozens of them going on right now, and we don't bat an eye at any of those except for this one. It's like, why in the world is this one becoming such a big deal out of all of the others? And I see a lot of people saying it's got to be for the oil. I would have to assume, because it doesn't make any other sense to do anything there rather than the oil. And I don't want to sound like I'm morally bankrupt here and say that the U.S. doesn't have a duty to stop genocides. I would say that we certainly do. But at the same time, how it works these days, there's about 24 of them going on right now, and we don't look or care about any of them at all, except for this one. And then that's when it doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. And also, by the way, I was doing some looking here to see if there might be some secondary reason that we would want to go to Nigeria as the United States. It looks like Nigeria is very, very rich in rare earth elements, a bunch of different types. And I'm trying to double check here. It looks like Nigeria, let me do some quick looking. Nigeria is number 5 in the world for rare earth production. So that might be a pretty big clue right there, considering that rare earths is currently something the U.S. is very focused on right now, and China pretty much has the entire rare earths market cornered just because of their geography. This might be an attempt by the United States to find a new source to procure and extract rare earth minerals. It could be that. That seems like a pretty valid reason right there.
Well, you know what's something interesting about this? I actually did some studying into that whole situation. It's actually a lot more complicated than you would think. We actually do not lag behind in rare earths production. As a matter of fact, I think if I'm correct, America makes up something like 40% of global rare earth ore production or extraction. The problem is that we don't have any of the refining capabilities, and China pretty much has the monopoly on refining capabilities. So everyone can mine out their rare earths around the world, but if you wanted to refine into anything that's usable, you have to ship it all to China, have them refine it, and then get it back later. And that's kind of where the bottleneck's happening, where China has a monopoly. So I don't know why we would also want to go to Nigeria for that reason, because if I'm not mistaken, and my numbers were correct, if America accounts for 40% of the rare earth mineral ore extraction in the world, then that means that our only issue is having an ability to refine that here in the United States, not accessing more raw ore.
Maybe so. It could be that. Maybe so. I just think the United States doesn't really want to start getting into that because there's so much red tape in the United States for, processing the rare earth metals, extracting them. It's like it's red tape central for pretty much anything, not just rare earth metals, but there's so much red tape for everything. And some of the red tape is necessary. We don't want to just, ravage our country just to get rare earths. We don't want to destroy the whole place and have it looking like a wasteland just to get minerals. But at the same time, though, at the same time, I could see some people making the argument, well, why is the U.S. going to be justified in going over to, let's say, Nigeria and to go over there and start, ravaging the land to get their rare earths? That's a little bit controversial to me, I would say personally, but you got to get them from somewhere. So, it's just a matter of where they're going to get them from. And since China doesn't care about ravaging their land, China ravages their country all the time to get the rare earths out of their land. So, you just got to get them from somewhere, and China has the market cornered. So I guess the U.S. is going to do what they got to do.
Yeah, I would suppose, but still a very interesting sort of development with Nigeria. In the meantime, we also were able to hear out of Washington one last thing. Apparently, there are going to be some nuclear tests coming up in the future. And according to the Energy Secretary, he stated, I think the tests we're talking about right now are systems tests. These are not nuclear explosions. These are what we call non-critical explosions. So it does appear that the Department of Energy generally believes for now that the nuclear weapons under his direct control will not be nuclear armed when they conduct the tests. So hopefully he'll still be correct on that. Moving on from that, and out of Washington, we also have been able to get some news out of East Asia. For one, the B-1 Lancers did go on a little flight today out of the, let's see here, the Misawa Air Base in Japan. We were able to see those on flight transponders for a short moment heading to the South China Sea. In the meantime, we also were able to hear that the President of the United States did state that Xi understands the consequences if China invades Taiwan. We're assuming that means that the U.S. will actually go to war to defend Taiwan, because that would generally be the only thing stopping China from invading them. So hopefully that's a good sign for the island containment chain and also for Taiwan and TSMC. We also were able to see that the USS Nimitz carrier strike group was active today within the area of the West Philippine Sea, being spotted on satellite, conducting fleet maneuvers. So we do know that there's a heavy U.S. naval presence within the area at this moment. Meanwhile, inside of the Islamic Republic of Iran, we did get to hear that Iran was apparently given a warning by the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth. He informed of an impending operation in the region and received a final warning that Iraqi armed groups, including Iranian-backed factions, should not respond. We also heard by the Iranians that apparently there have been messages about restarting negotiations, although we don't know how true that is necessarily at the moment. Inside of Shiraz, there was also a significant explosion that did occur. We don't really know why that happened, but it was pretty wild. Oh, well. Yeah, this is just in the middle of downtown Shiraz.
Oh, damn, shebang.
Dang!
That's yours in the video saying that.
Huh?
Was that you saying that, or somebody in the video saying, "Oh, dang"?
That was me. that was me.
Somebody's in the video is so muffled. I was like, somebody speaking English in the middle of Iran. That might be like Mossad or somebody.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. This video is so loud. Whenever you talk, I'm like, what? What? I can't hear you over the sound of the explosions, man. It's extremely loud. Moving on out of Iran, because that was really all we had out of the Middle East, we also were able to hear that Turkey is reducing its purchase orders of Russian oil as of today, according to industry sources cited by Reuters. So, now folks, it's finally time for us to move on into the big news. For one, Russia is still not going to talk to us about peace. That's not a shocker. Moving on from that and into our location unknowns, we did get to see this new thing that Russia has made. Okay, we're going to mute the funk music and just show you all the vehicle. It is the Evolution.
Ah, what the hell? What is that? That's not rebar anymore. It's like flexible, like, what is that, wire brushes or something?
We call it the Fro.
The Fro? What the hell is that, a sea mine sitting on top of it?
That's an electronic warfare system, a.k.a. a telemine from World War I.
It looks like an anti-submarine mine you'd see like hanging out under the water or something that they've thrown on top of it. That is, honestly, I'm kind of impressed with how they can kind of put that together. It's an abomination, but it's impressive. Yeah, look, it's like they put one of those on top of it or something.
Man, honestly, it is, man. It looks like he's going to go, what the hell? Bro, that one's in a parking lot. Diffused, obviously.
Oh man, I'll tell you what, they got the parking lot submarine thing out here, I tell you.
I'll tell you, love, I'll go down to the pub, yeah, I'll hit the sea mine a little bit, yeah, with the lads, and then we go in and get a pint, but beyond that, pretty ugly mug right here. It looks even worse from the back, which is usually hard to
blur
see.
out over there.
Huh?
What did they blur out on the left? It's like they blurred out something for explicit purposes. Do you see that?
Oh, dude, you didn't want to see what was going on down here. It was nasty.
Well, really, what the hell is that? Like, it looks, I can't even tell what's going on, but who cares anyway?
I mean, really, who does? Like, who does even? But this thing is terrible looking, really. But this is the new evolution of Russian tank protection. We also got to see this M270 Mars firing off a rocket.
I see you know your rockets well. Good one, sir. And get your hands off my missile.
Get your hands off my HIMARS! Man, I'm about to choke. I couldn't hit it. Like, I couldn't hit it well.
He's gonna choke. He's gonna choke. Come on, get it out. Can you get it out? Do you even know what you're doing? You choke artist.
I'm telling y'all, folks, I'm so lucky that my microphone is set up in a certain way tonight, because it's making it really easy to hit the mute button. If I couldn't hit the mute button, it would sound like I'm dying tonight, like I've been coughing so much. But moving on from that and into the casualty report, Ms. DC, Keeper of the Records, has been able to give us the following. Troop losses stay close to 1,000 a day. No tanks again after 5 weeks, but averaging 3 a day. Artillery and vehicles both rise to the average levels, and UAVs are averaging about 350 a day for the past 2 months. And the casualty report is as follows. 940 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed, along with 4 APCs, 121 supply trucks, 25 artillery pieces, 348 drones, and that was it. A pretty decent day, not the craziest day that we've seen, but still not bad. Moving on out of that, And further on and towards the front line, we also were able to see some Russian drones being intercepted, with Chad music ensuing.
And look at that. Also, by the way, I don't know if y'all have seen this or not, but there's now a thing in Russia where they're actually selling like model Shahed drones, like little scale models of Shaheds, and I think they're selling them to. I think they're for children. I think I'm not sure if they're like collectibles for adults or not, but I think it's like a kid's toy or something if I have it straight. But they're selling those now, so they have like proper models of these things right here, which are literally known for committing war crimes. The Russians send these straight into civilian populated areas, so that's another sick detail that's recently come out.
Man, I remember it took them like decades, man, to make the first like ME-262 RC model. It's like now the Russians are just like, oh hey, you want a war crime to fly? It's like, here, we can give you one. Like, here's an RC. It's like, wow, that's crazy. Honestly, man, the Russians are messed up enough though. That really is an off character for them. But moving on down into the Lehman front, we also got to see the Ukrainians going through and clearing out the remains of what is left after a failed Russian attack. These vehicles had generally been abandoned intact by the Russians, and so the Ukrainians had to come through after the attack had failed and doubly ensure that the tanks were destroyed. I mean, they're slamming them, bleed.
Oh, slamming them, Bliat, slamming them. Also, by the way, Brenda Triplet said, "Are you going to cover the crash outside Area 51?" There was a crash outside of that testing site. By the way, there was a crash out there. It happened a little while ago. Obviously, it's nobody's going to say what was actually crashing out there, but there was a thing that crashed. Some people speculate it could have been a drone. It might have happened to have been a Reaper. Nobody's really sure, but they've gotten all the debris. They've taken it away. But yeah, one of the very few crashes that actually happens outside the test site. It actually happened on one of the access roads leading into the site. It crashed out there. They had to cordon off the site to close the airspace out there beyond the normal closure of airspace. So that was kind of interesting. Did you hear about that, by the way?
I did a little bit, but generally, we don't cover those things because we're patriots, Matthew, and it's operational security risks. But it's all over the place anyway, so might as well talk about it. It was a crash on the access road. I don't know what it was. Nobody knows what it was, but it was pretty interesting nonetheless. I mean, when was the last time we ever heard about a crash at Area 51? I don't think we've ever heard about one the whole time we've been
Yeah.
covering news on the show. Actually,
Yeah, it's been a while, but for the people saying, "Oh, it was some UFO or something that crashed," I hate to break it to you, but it was probably not a UFO that crashed out there. It was probably something a lot more mundane than that. It was because also, by the way, if y'all don't know, they also fly like pretty standard UAVs out there, like Reaper drones and things like that. They actually test them out there, and also they sometimes train people on those out there. So sometimes it's just because something's flying at Area 51 doesn't mean it's something highly top secret. It does happen, but it's not always that way. There's F-16s that fly out of there that are like base patrols and things like that. There's Black Hawks that fly out of there, and also they fly Reapers out of there too. So it was probably something very mundane.
most likely so. In the meantime, though, we did get to see these strikes happening in Luhansk.
Короче, ебать они летают. Просто вот. А еще прикол в том, что только что моргнула. О, ебать, тут зарево розовое, такое уж малиновое. Угу.
Well, moving on from that clip, let's take a look at the second one. Oh, look, air defense fire.
На нахуй, позбивали, пидорасы.
Oh,
На нахуй.
That's all someone would say is by definition a UFO. Yeah, but we mean like the alien type. That's usually what people mean by a UFO is like a flying saucer from Mars or, some guys or something like that. It wasn't anything like that.
Да ты шо? Моя
honestly, if it was me wanting to test an aircraft, I would fly it in open plain view, honestly, because nobody ever looks up at the sky. Like you'd be surprised. Most people are just focused on literally looking at ground level. People usually don't walk around with their heads like staring straight up at the sky. So even if something that was top secret was being tested, 99% of people would never even know it was flying over their head because most people are not trained to look up and scan the sky. So they're not going to see it anyway, unless it's flying super low.
I'd just be straight up with y'all. If I was trying to fly a super secret plane, I'd just tell everyone that I'm about to fly a super secret plane. Because you can bet money no one would go and look at it then. They'd probably be like, that's a distraction tactic made by big government to lie to you, to make you think it's a secret plane, but there's really something better that they're trying to hide, and this is just the cover-up. And then you completely either have everyone in the world overestimating your abilities, so they just think that there's no way to win, or you sit there and have everyone thinking that this is some sort of a smoke show and a distraction technique. Because think about it, folks. Every single time that the government has ever come out and said anything about what has been secret and they finally let people know about it, what does everyone say? Oh, they're just letting you know about it now because they're trying to blow a smoke show here by telling you about this, so you're not paying attention to the other thing that they're doing right now. Everyone says that, and that's what everyone thinks. So if you sat there and just told everyone about your super top secret project, just a test flight, you're like, hey, this is my like super top secret project, most advanced thing I have on the planet. They're going to sit there and think, that's not really the most advanced top secret thing on the planet. There's something better, and that's just a distraction for everyone. And that's what they would think, and that's what our adversaries would probably think too. Like, I'm just kidding about that. Like, still obviously not a good idea to say that if that's really the most advanced thing you have. But to be honest, reverse psychology like that probably could work in some instances.
I can see why that we test these top secret aircraft out here in the area we're currently at, like Utah, Nevada, places like that. When you drive out here, like you look around and realize this is like literally perfect area for flying stuff around if you want to keep it undetected, because like outside of the city, it's just barren. There's nothing out here, so you can just fly around wherever you want. And there might be an occasional sparse person somewhere, but it's like they're out in the middle of nowhere. They're by themselves. Nobody's going to honestly believe them if they said, "Oh, I saw a flying saucer." Nobody's gonna believe them. They're gonna be like, "Oh, it's another kook that just saw something or whatever," and they're just making it up to get some attention. So honestly, kudos to them. This is perfect place out here to fly those type of things.
Oh, that, by the way, that's why we did move to Salt Lake City, so that way we would be within commuting distance of Janet Airlines, so that way we can get to Area 51 and help them out with all the super secret cool government stuff. What did that crazy schizo man at Area 51 say in that police body cam where he was talking to the camo dudes? He was like, Big Nine called me out here to work on the nano drones or some crazy stuff like that.
That's right. You were trying to work on the nanobots, that went into the bloodstream.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. It was Majestic 9. They
yeah,
sent him out there.
Majestic 9. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Majestic 9. They sent him out there to work on the nanobots and stuff like that. Honestly, I can only imagine what that sheriff's department deals with on a routine basis out there. Can you imagine like the vast majority of people that go to like the Area 51? Now, obviously, some people are just like going there just to like say, "Oh, look, I got a picture of the gate" or something like that. But there's like legit crazy people that show up at that gate, I'm sure, all the time, talking about, "Hey, man, let me in. I was called here by like Skunk Works or something. Let me in." It's like I can imagine that happens 24/7.
I was called here by Big Papa. I'm here to fix the plumbing.
Why wouldn't you call me Big Papa?
I was brought here to have an encounter with the aliens. Bro, what kind of weirdo are you? I'm not even arresting you, man. Get out of here. Man, honestly, I would be honest with y'all, I would absolutely hate to work in the sheriff's department around Area 51. I think that they deal with nothing rather than people trying to mess with Area 51. Because there's nobody living out there in that county. So there's practically no crime because no one's out there. So you're just dealing with Area 51 weirdos.
Well, no, that's not true. Rachel's a town nearby to the main gate, but a lot of people that live in Rachel, when I say a lot of them, some of them work on the base and they live in Rachel because I mean it's common sense. I mean, who the hell is going to live out in Rachel, which is like out in the middle of freaking nowhere, unless you happen to have a reason to live out there. So if you go to Rachel, very strange little place out there. You'll notice that people are very closed off and stuff like that. Very small little town. And also there happens to be some buses that park there as well that might maybe go to the base from time to time. So there are people that live out here. It's just very sparse.
I'm not gonna lie though, man. Like you're like, oh no, there are some people who live here. Look at this dude and tell me how many people are living here. You can probably count them all on one hand. Maybe like a couple of, well, I don't know. Maybe your hand would be genetically mutated to count a couple of dozen of them, but probably just a couple of dozen people in this town. What is the population of this place, anyways?
Very small.
Oh, it has a population of 48. So yeah, it's like nobody. Yeah. So yeah, that sheriff's department has like nobody to deal with, because there's nobody living out here in this county.
Yeah, pretty much. Honestly, this is a very strange place. I've seen and heard of people going here from time to time. They actually do park some buses here, which might be affiliated with the government around this spot, and they actually transport people to the base through the main access road from Rachel. So that's where I get the assumption that there must be a good number of people working on the base here at Rachel. Because, like I said, who the hell's going to live out in Rachel unless you like have a job that you need to go commute to from there? It's a very remote place.
Um, excuse me, sir. I need to get to work. I work in Area 51. What road do you live on? Extraterrestrial highway. Oh yeah, that sounds believable. Like
Man, I don't know why they call it that. That's honestly cringy as hell. Like, do you believe that Area 51 is like one of the most frequented tourist sites in the United States as a whole? Like, it tops the charts every single year as a tourist
Oh
site.
yeah, I know. And it's just it's really the silliest thing, folks, because there are so many other facilities here in America that are doing crazy stuff, even crazier sometimes than what Area 51 is doing. Because Area 51 is actually more so. While my vocal cords almost just turned into RFK on a dime right there, like I almost went, it was almost a whole beef. But beyond that, Area 51 isn't the coolest thing. It's just aerospace testing. That's generally it. That's why they have the runway. They test aircraft out there, or generally airframes. Or if there's any sort of aircraft that we have that are high altitude or faster flying, like, for example, the SR-71 or the U-2, they'll usually operate out of that base, back in the day, historically. But there are loads of others that do all kinds of cool things. Like in Alabama, for example, we have the Redstone Arsenal, which does all kinds of cool stuff with missilery. Redstone Arsenal is not only huge for NASA's missilery with their rockets and such, but they're also big for the Army's missilery and the Navy's and the Marines and the Air Forces and everyone else's. It's this crazy sort of a thing. And they have all these cool classified programs that go on at Redstone. Like all of the GMLRS missiles that the HIMARS uses, they were all developed and made here in the developed and generally designed here in the Redstone Arsenal, and their prototypes were also tested here. Like, that's pretty wild to think about. And then up in the north, at places like Picatinny Arsenal, there's a whole bunch of other cool stuff going on up there. There's a lot of cool stuff going on everywhere around America, but Area 51, which a lot of people mistake it for, doesn't have a monopoly on American classified or top secret research and development. It just happens to be the most famously known, but there are dozens of facilities like that throughout America, all specializing in developing and researching different kinds of technologies and systems. But
You know, it's just pretty cool though. It's gotten a lot of notoriety because like some of the most well-known like top secret like CIA aircraft programs that come out of there, like the SR came out of there. You also had the U-2 as well was tested there. So it's got a huge history behind it of actually developing really good airframes that we still use even today. Not obviously not the SR, but the U-2 we still use today. Like for example, to photograph the balloon that flew over the United States and things like that. So it's honestly I'm pretty sure they still use it for testing. Like some people say it's a decoy site. I see some people saying that it's just a decoy place. I think they still use it, and it's still good. Like even though it's a tourist attraction now, you can still fly stuff out of there without being detected. I'm sure. So there's a reason they still operate. It's not just for decoy purposes.
yeah, that's true. Most likely, that's most likely true. Yes, that. Also, by the way, we also got to hear that inside of the occupied regions of Ukraine, they're now mobilizing all men aged 18 to 55 for the Russian army. So it looks like if you're in the occupied territories, it's not a good time at all. In the meantime, we also got to see at Shakhtarsk there was air defense and possibly attacks that were ongoing, including that one. Moving on from that, and further on towards the front near Pokrovsk, we also got to see some Russian tanks getting knocked out within this area. And we see the successful hit right there.
Nova.
Nova Ukraini. We also got to see some Blackhawks in operation. Oh, look at that.
Oh, very nice. That was a clean Alabama.
Whoa, look at that one. Dude, I love these. They're so cool.
Was that a medic helicopter?
I don't think so. I think these are technically a part of the GUR.
Ah, okay. These weren't the ones that were transporting Budanov around, was it?
I think they may be, actually. I think that at some point these did move Budanov around. But for now, I think they're just attached to the G. It's the GUR or the GRU. It's interchangeable. Some people say it either way. But they're attached to the GRU at the moment. I believe they're just conducting operations in support of the GRU.
Interesting. Yeah, because I know I saw the footage of Budanov. He actually made a rare visit to the front lines. So I was wondering if maybe these were transporting him around, because the Blackhawks are something that we don't see very often. They obviously have them and use them, but you don't see them on camera a whole bunch. So kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is pretty interesting. But that's the end of that clip, and moving even further on down and on into the area of Saki, we were also able to hear of explosions that were apparently rocking the Saki area. We'll be trying to see if we can get some video or picture evidence of that by tomorrow to be able to show all of y'all. But with that, folks, it's time for us to move on up to Kyiv and cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1348 of the news from around the world. And hopefully it loads. It's loading very slowly, but here it is, folks. It is time for the speech. Peach!
Шановні українці, українки, сьогодні вже можна сказати, що є хороший результат для нашої ППО. Україна має тепер більше патріотів. Я хочу подякувати канцлеру Мерцу, дякую Німеччині та всім, хто допомагає. Наші домовленості, вони виконані. Є ще патріоти в Україні. Включаємо в роботу. Звісно, для всієї території нашої держави потрібно більше систем, щоб закрити ключові об'єкти інфраструктури, наші міста. І ми будемо надалі працювати, щоб отримати це. І причому не тільки на політичному рівні, з державами та лідерами, але й з виробниками всіх потрібних систем ППО, ракет до них. Будуть на наступному тижні зустрічі щодо цього. Ми представили партнерам всі розрахунки, всі можливі варіанти, як забезпечити достатньо надійну ППО. Майже щодня ми захищаємось від російської балістики, потрібно знищувати і надалі російську військову авіацію. І все це потребує багатокомпонентної системи ППО. А це і наша військова авіація, і є рішення щодо цього і по Гріпенах, і по французьких літаках. Ми працюємо по F-16, також системи ППО і ракети до них. Розвиток мобільних вогневих груп і, звісно, пріоритет зараз дрони-перехоплювачі. Кількість перехоплювачів на цей рік буде такою, як визначено державним завданням. Важливо, щоб сили оборони так само швидко та якісно разом з усіма залученими інституціями збільшували кількість навчених операторів дронів, відповідну систему. Хочу також подякувати сьогодні нашим воїнам Сил оборони України, Служби безпеки України, нашій розвідці за далекобійні санкції проти Росії. Географія санкцій збільшується. Втрати російської воєнної машини також збільшуються. Причому застосовуємо все частіше не тільки українські дрони, але й наші ракети добре себе демонструють. Я дякую нашим виробникам. Фронт. Були сьогодні доповіді військових. Передусім увага Покровському напрямку. Є результати у знищенні окупанта. Особливо відзначу підрозділи 79-ї окремої десантно-штурмової бригади. Також хочу подякувати воїнам Сил спеціальних операцій, спецпризначенцям Військової служби правопорядку, Національної поліції, СБУ та розвідки за ефективні, активні дії як в районах Покровська, так і в районах Куп'янська. Дякую за якісну бойову роботу на Донеччині воїнам 1-го окремого штурмового полку. За вогневу підтримку в районах Покровська дякую 55-й окремій артилерійській бригаді. Також за бої в Куп'янську та поруч із містом дякую підрозділам 127-ї окремої важкої механізованої бригади. Молодці воїни. 93-я окрема механізована Костянтинівський напрямок. Дякую, хлопці. І ще Оріхівський напрямок. 65-та окрема механізована бригада. Дякую вам. Слава всім, хто б'ється заради України, всім, хто допомагає нам, всім, хто забезпечує Україні необхідні результати. Кожен день має бути більше сили для всіх нас. Слава Україні!
Героям слава. And Героям слава. And Haram Slava. And with that, folks, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 1348 of the news from around the world. And that's going to be moving us on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to each and every single one of y'all. And boy, howdy, folks. It is going to be one hell of a blast. I was just told, unfortunately, that Enforcer Matt's internet has actually just gone out. So we will have to hopefully see that gets fixed here incredibly soon. It appears that Enforcer Matt will not be with us for a brief moment. But in the meantime, folks, it will be time for us to get on into that second segment where we get to talk to each and every one of y'all. We will, of course, be calling off the top donors that have thrown in support in between the last segment and this one, because the fundraiser has now reached an amazing $2,687 raised for Nova Ukraine, which is absolutely incredible. I also have to say that I've seen a lot of people in the chat talking about all kinds of stuff, like Syria Production saying they're putting up a fight in Pokrovsk, and they certainly have been. The Russians have been taking wildly high losses, and not only that, have been losing a decent amount of ground. It doesn't sound like Enforcer Matt may be back with us, though. Matthew, are you there?
Yes. Yes, I am back. I don't know why, but I think my modem just decided to install an update in the middle of the night. I have to change that setting so it doesn't do that again. But I was just about to say the internet's been doing fantastic out here in the new place. Like the call's really good and everything until it just did that. So hopefully I can get that fixed.
Man, I gotta say, that was absolutely crazy. I went, Ram Slava, and then there was just complete silence. And so I did it like 2 more times, and then just went, okay, everyone, we're gonna be moving on now. But, Matty, can you give us a shout out of all the top donors that we've had in between the last segment and this one?
Yes, so we are currently sitting at just shy of $2,700 raised, which is well above the goal, by the way. And also a huge shout out to Hal Rose, who threw in a $333 donation, along with Captain Ted, who put in a $100, and also James White, who threw in a $50. And a huge shout out to all three of y'all as well for that very generous support of the fundraiser and helping us to hit that $2,700 mark. And when Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta say, it's absolutely amazing and incredible to see so many of y'all continuing to support and help out these fundraisers. Y'all's support is massively appreciative over in Ukraine. A lot of people are greatly appreciative for it. They would thank y'all heavily if they could. And I've got to say on their behalf, a huge thanks to all of y'all so much once again for supporting Nova Ukraine and helping them to help out more Ukrainians in need. So a huge thanks to y'all so much once again. And with that, folks, we're going to be answering a couple of live chats, and then we're going to be rounding this thing out. I've got to try and take care of my voice here because my throat's starting to hurt pretty badly, and I'm trying to hang it together. But I just want to make sure to explain that to folks. I'm still recovering from sickness, so I'm trying to make sure to give it all I got, but at the same time not overdo it so that way I don't destroy my voice, and then we're off air for even longer after this. So we're going to be getting about 5 live chat questions, also considering that we're pretty much almost already running overtime for a fundraiser stream length. We're going to get 5 live chat questions, then we're going to round this stream on out for the night. Actually, as a matter of fact, I believe that we have a great deal of super chats to get to first. So we'll get to those super chats, and then we'll get to the 5 live chats, and then we'll round this thing out. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so we have about 10 super chats. So we'll get to those first and then grab those live chat questions as well. But jumping into our first of the last super chats, this one goes to Bex Chitwood, who put in a very generous $50 super chat. And thank you very much, Bex, for that support. And also excuse that slight voice crack there. And Bex said, LSA, welcome back, and here's to the sweater fund. And I hear they have a winter up there. Now, you know something that's interesting, Bex, and also to everybody else that's curious, is Utah's cold is very, very dry. And I confirmed that because we got here and it was about 40 degrees outside. And I stepped outside without a coat and I was like, oh, this isn't that bad. It feels like it's 60 out here, but it was actually 40 degrees. The humidity makes a huge difference. Like when it's 40 in Alabama, you felt like you were cold and wet. In Alabama, and you felt extremely cold, like you're about to freeze. Out here in Utah, it does not feel like that. 40 is actually bearable without a coat, and some people out here are actually riding motorcycles with no coat on in 40-degree weather. So that's very interesting to see that difference. So it is a strong winter. It does start snowing at some point, I'm sure, but it's not as bad as people make it out to be. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say that it's been it's been really interesting because the cold out here isn't that cold, which is a little wild because everyone was always saying, "Oh, Alabama isn't that cold. Wait until you get up here." It isn't that cold up here, really. 40 degrees is I mean, hell, that was actually quite comfortable walking outside in 40-degree weather the other day. In Alabama, if you get out in 40-degree weather with the kind of humidity we get down here, you would have easily been able to, freeze to death out there for sure. So that was pretty wild. That was actually really cool. But we will be making sure to get some sweaters and some warm weather clothes because I still don't want to be out there too long in shorts and a polo, which is usually what I'm wearing whenever I go out. So with that, a big thanks to you so much for the massive support once again and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Smarzig, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Smarzig, as well. They said, we are back.
Hey, we are back. Hey, oh, and we are back. And I gotta say, big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep running. I gotta say, it's a wonderful thing to know that everyone was waiting for us to come back. I'm so sorry everyone had to get enforcement withdrawals for a while. We really do hate that that happens, and we wish we could try and find a way to make that not as bad, but unfortunately we haven't been able to find a cure to that yet. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And it's good to know that everyone is happy to see the enforcers back on air. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Tom Exman, and Tom puts in a 20. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support as always. He said, tell us about your trip. And honestly, Tom, it is a long story. I'm going to make that video that I told y'all about, and I'm actually going to get this one out pretty quick because there's not a whole bunch of editing that needs to be done to it. It's pretty much going to be stringing together all the videos I have and making it one continuous video. And I'll put it out on Patreon first, and then we'll show it on the stream shortly after we put it on Patreon. So it's not going. I'm not going to like hype it up too much. It's not going to be a crazy wild video or something like that, but it will show y'all at least some of the process, at least somewhat. You'll get an idea of what it looked like at least, but it's not going to be anything like highly produced or highly fancy or anything like that. So it'll be interesting. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say it's going to be quite interesting, and it is a long story, a long time ago. And I got to say, one thing that I did start to greatly respect was that free breakfast that the hotels gave you in the morning. Those little eggs with the sausages and like the bacon or whatever else they give you. That was like a lifesaver. There was this, when we were in North Platte, there was actually this hotel we were in, I forgot the name of it, but they actually had like these ready-made mini pancakes that came out of a machine, and that was probably the best thing that I had on the whole trip, food-wise. But still, I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make this channel possible and help us to keep this thing running. So a huge thanks to you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And also, we have a $20 support from All I. And thank you very much for the support, by the way. They said, you guys kick ass. And welcome to Utah, and keep it going. And my name is Andrew.
Hey, that's crazy cool. And I gotta say, thank you for the welcome to Utah. Hopefully, we'll be right at home here. I think we will. One thing that I will say, though, this is something that's been a bit of a culture shock to us, is that there are a lot of kids around here, and they wander around without their parents. And that's something that is really weird to us, because growing up in the South, for one, we were never allowed anywhere away from our parents, and no one else was either that I knew of growing up. Like, you had to literally be like within arm's distance of them, or else you got in severe trouble. So one thing that's weird is that we've been going around the stores and stuff trying to get, like, our basic necessities, toiletries, all that sort of stuff. And there will just be like kids like wandering up and down the sidewalk, no parent in sight. Kids in the store, kids running around the store, and I'm just like, where the hell are the parents? Like isn't someone supposed to be looking over these kids? And the kids are like totally fine, and that's like a huge culture shock to us, because I've never seen a kid playing outside like in groups. Like, even from the South, that just never happened. Like, at least even when we were growing up, like when we were kids, that just never happened. We never saw that, and it just wasn't a thing. And also, nobody ever let their kids out of sight. Everyone around here lets their kids out of sight. And I'm like, that is just wild. I was telling Matthew today, I was like, dude, this is like what parents used to do back in the 80s. They just told their kids to go outside, and they just practically did whatever the hell they wanted as long as they came home. I was like, that is just wild, because we were talking about that. We're like, man, if we had done that, or if anyone we had known growing up in the South would have done that, we would have been whipped to death over like escaping the vision of our parents and going out of sight. So like I was telling Mandy, I mean that has to be a measure of a healthy sort of a city, at least with the type of people here. Apparently, people aren't so sketchy that you have to endlessly keep an eye on your kids. They can actually wander around kind of free range, which is like one thing that it's a little bit overstimulating because having like kids playing hide and seek and like running through a store, like considering that we've never dealt with that before, that is a little overstimulating, especially when you almost shove a shopping cart right in front of them because they're bolting down the aisle and you can't see them and you're coming around a blind turn. But at the same time, on the flip side, it's a good thing to know that kids can get out and be kids around here because we never got to do that in the South, and I don't know of anyone else that I knew of growing up that got to do that. So good on them that they have a nice, well-kept city with good people in it where they can kind of like have a better life than we had growing up as a kid. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Big thanks to you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
I will say though, generally speaking, overall, like it's extremely beautiful out here. Like Salt Lake City is phenomenal when it comes to the beauty side of it. Also, everybody's friendly, like we mentioned before. I will say, I don't care how safe a place is. I don't understand parents that let their kids run around out of their sight like that. There's like, there's wackos everywhere. Like even if Salt Lake City is nice, there's still like the occasional nut here and there and stuff like that. So I just don't understand parents that let their kids run off like that. It seems like a bad idea. Maybe I'm overly protective or something, but if I had kids, I personally would let them do that. But I guess it's freeing for the kids. They get to do whatever they want or sort of run around and feel like they have some freedom. But I don't know. Like I just couldn't bring myself to let my kids run off like that. It seems a little bit irresponsible, honestly. But anyways, jumping into our next super chat. This one goes to Arar983, who puts in a $20 support, and thank you very much, Arar, as well for that support. And he said, "Cold Ease Fund, and glad you guys made it through the Oregon Trail and only got mild dysentery."
That's a way to look at it. I like that. And I gotta thank you so much for support, and thank you for the Cold Ease Fund. I'm definitely going to need it. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And also someone said, where in the hell are y'all from? We are from Lower Alabama. Where we actually grew up is not Birmingham. Birmingham was the place that we were at after I turned, I think I was close to turning 19 by the time we moved to Birmingham. But we actually grew up in the area around Montgomery, Alabama, and specifically in the little town of Wetumpka, just north of that. But this place was okay when we were first born, but it rapidly devolved into being a terrible place. So nobody around here ever had like a life like these kids in Salt Lake City had. When we were growing up around here, it was so dangerous and it was so bad off. And also, like a lot of people are like, when I say that, a lot of people are probably going to be thinking of people wearing like gang colors, like the Hoods or the Bloods. It wasn't that. Like it wasn't just that. It was just violent, angry rednecks. Like it's like literally every group that you can imagine. Like they're all going to be extremely angry and violent, and they have no dams to give about kids. Like they will hurt a kid as quickly as they'll hurt anyone else. So nobody, when I was growing up, including ourselves, ever really went out and did anything. If we did, it was always a heavily coordinated event, and those very rarely happen because parents are working, they've got a lot going on. So you never really had a lot of hanging out or goings on with any kids from school outside of school because everyone just stayed home or they stayed with their parents, and you were never allowed out of their sight, because if you were out of their sight, who knows what could happen. Anything could happen to you. And people around here, like especially people around this area, there was a good running chance they may not be the greatest of people. So that was how it was growing up. Like I wouldn't know any different. So coming out here to a place like this where kids are literally like wandering around free range, like the first thing you think in your head, because this was just drilled in us from being down here, where the hell are their parents? Like these kids could be in great jeopardy or danger out here being on their own like this, because that's how it was back where we were from. And and kids would sometimes go missing, like they would be kidnapped or something, and you would know about it. Everyone would know about it. It was somewhat more common around Montgomery for stuff like that to happen. And so,
No, I remember it honestly, the danger to kids and where we grew up wasn't necessarily just the strangers.
it was
It
the
was
parents.
also the parents too, because there was multiple terrible tragedies. I remember them vividly, where the parents would just wipe out the whole family. Like I remember that happening 2 or 3 times at least. Like the father would go crazy and just wipe out the whole family, like literally in one night. And the next morning you'd wake up and you'd hear, oh, well, so and so's kid or whatever, their father went crazy and wiped the whole family out. And you'd be like, what? He'd be like, wait a minute, say it again. And it was true. Like, and that happened many times. And that was just like a couple of the tragedies that happened out there. Just crazy stuff.
Oh
And
yeah.
it wouldn't be like, I see some people saying the crackheads. They weren't crackheads. That was the crazy thing. They were just, I guess, just angry people that just went berserk, I guess.
Oh yeah, it's just people who snapped, and it was so normal, folks, around where we were at. I mean, people wouldn't even bat an eye. They just be, oh, like Tommy, he just lost it, killed his whole family last night. Only one kid escaped. They got over to someone else's house, and then he took himself out afterwards. He took the easy way out. That was just like the most normal thing. I think that happened at least once a year, or more than that a year. And so you just hear about that and be like, oh, well, there went so and so. They got wiped out, or it would be like, or the kid in your grade would be the one who escaped, or none of them would escape. And then you'd be like, well, there they went. Sometimes you wouldn't really know them. Like sometimes you kind of know them. I never really knew any of those people incredibly well. I just kind of knew them in the periphery, like they were either in my grade or they were in a couple of grades below or above. So you just kind of hear about it and be like, oh man, that's terrible. But it was kind of like a normal thing, really. But I mean, it was a very interesting place to grow up. I feel like a lot of our experiences growing up are completely different than most other people's experiences, because I see a lot of people in the chat and y'all are like, man, we do not at all relate to these stories, and it's a little unfortunate that we grew up in a place like that where it was a lot like that. And also, I see some people saying, "Nah, rednecks." Don't helicopter their parents. No, they do. Well, their kids. No, they did. Like everyone did. Nobody didn't. I can't like we went to a public school. We didn't go to a private school. So we went there with everyone else. And everyone that I knew, whether they were very well off and they were going to public school, the kids I went to school with, or they were very bad off and they were pretty much in Section 8, every single one of them, their parents helicoptered them. It was just that dangerous, or perceived to be that. Well, it really was that dangerous to be around there, and so everybody helicoptered their parents. Literally everybody did. Like God forbid if you ever escape the eyesight of your parents. I mean, there would literally be a manhunt out for you, because it was known that it was so dangerous for a kid to be out on their own like that for any period of time. If they went missing for a couple hours, I mean, hell, they could be nabbed by someone and they could be gone. So I hope that does address that well. But that's kind of why that whole thing about kids just roaming free here, they actually, especially today, because I've seen that more today than any other day that we've been here so far. That was just wild to me, like a true culture shock moment. I was like, it must be that safe, which is just unbelievable. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Chef Danny B. And Chef puts in a $20 support. And thank you very much, Danny, for that support indeed. And he said, good evening, Enforcers. Chef Danny here. And glad to have y'all back. And glad the trip was somewhat safe. And also, you're loving your new home and LTLSA.
Hey, and we are really happy about the new HQ. It's a great place, and I gotta say, a big thanks to you, Danny B. And it's a good thing we made it through in one piece. I gotta say, the parts where it almost went bad, honestly, just made it more of a memorable sort of a trip. Honestly, it was a pretty interesting one, to say the least, and one that I'll always remember, because that's the last time I'm driving a Penske truck 40 hours and about 2,000 miles across the country. I'm never doing that again in my life. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Robert Krogan, who puts in a 10. And Robert said, welcome back.
Hey, and a big thanks to you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I gotta say, folks like you are, of course, a big part of helping us to make this thing possible every single day. And I gotta say, a huge thanks to you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running and making this thing possible. So a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Chris's mom, who puts in a 10 and said, did you title today's video after things we have done?
Oh, yeah, no, I just titled it after the things that happened today. So big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And also, I just saw someone say in the chat a second ago. They said, let's see here. Let me see. Someone said it. It was interesting. Someone said I grew up in New York City. I grew up in the rough neighborhoods in New York, and I don't recall my classmates getting murdered. Oh well, I mean, yeah, I mean that just happened. Like that happened around our place. Like hell, there was like actually there was I think at least one I can remember. I think there may have been a couple of others of kids. And they were like in like hell. I remember I was in sixth or seventh grade when one of them happened, but they just like they offed themselves. Like it was crazy how all that sort of stuff was just happening all the time. Like when I think back about it, it was absolutely bizarre. And people were dying all around us in our own neighborhood. Like someone banged
Oh,
their head on the side of their pool and they drowned in the pool. Like they were like I think 5 houses down from us down the street. And then there was another kid. He was well, not really a kid. He was like 20 when this happened, but he was really troubled. He went in an abandoned house, and that whole deal happened. And there was all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, like honestly, uh, we talked about it even when we were there. We were like, dang, everyone dies in the most gruesome ways around here. Like if they're not getting killed by someone else, they're usually going out in gruesome ways by their own design. And it was really wild, honestly, because whenever we talk about it, people are always like, man, that like none of that stuff ever happened to me when I was growing up. And like everything, like like there were multiple times, as a matter of fact, kids would try and have gang gunfights in our school, so they would have to have the SWAT team come in and try and stop the gunfight before it would happen. Or there were parents, like there were like there'd be these nasty custody battles that would be going on, and some dad would call up the school and he would start threatening every single person in the staff if that they're going to come down there and get their kid, and they're going to do all kinds of crazy stuff to the staff and everyone else in the school. So then they literally bring down the whole SWAT team from the county with armored cars, the dogs and everything, waiting for this guy to show up. So you would literally, all classes would stop for the day. You would just sit there for 4 or 5 hours. Your parents can't pick you up, and you would just sit there with literal cops outside in the hall with MP5s, just waiting for something to happen or for it to end, so that way you could go home. Honestly, I don't know if we grew up in a town or a prison. I don't really know what's the best way to explain it. But we practically got institutionalized before we even knew what institutionalization was, because of how we kind of grew up. And that doesn't
man, they
really.
ran the school. They ran the school like a prison. It felt like a prison. I'm not exaggerating that whatsoever. Honestly, the older I've gotten and the more detached from that environment I've gotten, I've started to realize exactly how bad it really was. Honestly, it was horrendous. Like it's really horrendous to even call that like a proper school system, honestly, because granted, it's better than Montgomery school system. I mean, Montgomery school system, you go into that and you're putting yourself in jeopardy, in my personal opinion. I had known one individual that went there that claimed he got stabbed. So I'm like, well, that's obviously pretty damn bad. But our school system was just a little smidge off from that. Like it was barely any better than that. So I don't know. Like it was really awful. Like it seemed like the whole school was run by people that weren't really fit to run anything, honestly.
And there was at least, I don't know if you did this, Matthew, but there was at least 3 times in separate instances when I was in school. Probably the first time happening in like sixth or seventh grade. Sixth and seventh grade was like the wildest time when I was at school, like for all the crazy stuff that was happening. But there was at least 2 or 3 times where I sat there and it would get it like the situation would start to get so bad with everything that was going on, and how like even the teachers would be like something bad is about to happen like very soon with how badly things are going. Like I would sit there and start writing a letter to my parents to be like, hey, if I die, I'm so sorry, hopefully this letter finds you all, blah blah blah. I'm trying to like make last amends. I probably did that 2 or 3 times in school because there would be a lockdown or something crazy going on or something like that, and I'd be like, if I'm about to die here because of some lunatic, I want to at least get out my like final piece with my parents by writing out a little letter really quickly or something. So that kind of stuff was normal. A lot of people wouldn't think that though, because we're pretty articulate and we don't sound like we came from a place like that. But that was life for us growing up. So coming to a place like Salt Lake, very different sort of a deal. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to SC Dear Girl, who puts in a 10. And she said, Quicken of Battle.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And quicken a battle indeed. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Boulder Boy, who said in Wyoming, the wind season starts in early January and ends a few weeks after Christmas.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. And I'd have to say, that is quite an interesting sort of a deal indeed. We'll have to take a look into that and maybe travel up into Wyoming here and there and take a little look. And so a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Dapper Dragon, who puts in a 10, and thank you very much, Dapper. They said, welcome back, and I feel like we are overestimating Russia's nuclear capability, and they haven't had a single successful test in years in LSA.
I would agree. They don't have a single good nuclear test to work off of for quite a while, to be entirely honest with you. I don't really think any of their nuclear programs have been successful much at all. But I do thank you massively for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling, because it is folks like you who make this thing possible and help us to point out the failures when they actually do happen. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And also, man, I don't know why in the world that person made that comment. You're not articulate. You just waffle. It's like, bro, you've been watching for like a year. What the hell are you talking about? It's like, if we're waffling so much, why are you still here? But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
I wish I could waffle, but sadly I don't have any ingredients for it, nor do I have a waffle machine handy, so I'm sadly not. But anyways, moving on to our next one here. This one goes to Stinson Ben, who puts in a 5. He said, Lower Wyoming is amazing, and I worked up there for a while, and Saratoga is a place that should not be overlooked, and it's only 4 to 5 hours from you.
Oh, really? Saratoga. Let's take a little look at that. Saratoga Springs?
They just said Saratoga.
Saratoga Springs.
If it's 4 or 5 hours away, that's far. No, that's definitely not the Saratoga they're talking about. It's not 4 or 5 hours away.
Saratoga.
That's Wyoming.
Oh, Saratoga, Wyoming, huh? Oh, where's this? Oh, wow, this is out there near Laramie and Rawlins. This is a good ways back. Not too far, but it is a little ways back. I was thinking probably if I ever go out this way here soon, which I'll probably do this I have to do this on a Monday, but I was wanting to go back to Green River, because there's this really cool little, area here that the Union Pacific runs, and I wanted to go down there and take some pictures, like this guy did. Also, that Union Station is starting to look a little worn out. But
I like it when they get worn out like that, when they look a little decrepit and a little bit falling down and stuff like that. It gives it some character.
Man, you gotta love
look.
some.
Oh, look at that. That's actually the hotel. We're out there. We stayed in that hotel right there.
Yeah. That's actually kind of wild that they had this specific picture of that. And then we drove through that tunnel, and that tunnel was actually closed, if you didn't know, Matthew, when we left that morning because of the cold.
Yeah, I did know that, actually.
Kind of wild, honestly. I didn't know that they closed interstate tunnels. But I wanted to go back to this place to try and get some cool rail fanning pictures, because it was a really neat little spot. Like, look at that. That is actually pretty cool looking. Really desert and arid-like. I was like, that would be cool for some pictures. But there also are some just really nice scenery spots around here, too. So that would be pretty cool. But still, a big thanks to you so much once again for support and help this channel to keep running. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And we also have a 2 from It's Court, who said, welcome back, Enforcers.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for the welcome back. We are happy to be back, and we thank you so much for waiting for our return. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 2 from Bruce Lee, who said, Lithuania treaty idea, cap the Russian traffic speed at 5 kilometers per hour.
I like that idea. That's actually a pretty good one. And a big thanks to you for the support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And we are on to the next one.
And with that, folks, that is actually all of our super chats. So it's now time to get the live chat questions. And tonight, by the way, the Morse code did not change. The Morse code was the same as it was the last time we were on the air. So a huge shout out to all of our Morse code decoders for still decoding that anyway. But it was not different tonight. Sadly, we have a little glitch happening in the background. We'll have to try to see if we can get fixed so that way we can change the Morse code. But anyways, a huge shout out to the Morse code decoders once again. But moving on to our first live chat question, this one goes to Mystical, who said, Enforcers, did you hear about the U.S. continuing nuclear testing again?
Yes, I did, and we actually did cover that earlier tonight. And so with that, we are on to the fourth to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to Blind Man, who said, are you guys going to visit the Bonneville Salt Flats? And yes, definitely going to do that. That's a place I've been trying to get to for a while out there. I want to definitely go see that. So I'll be going out there. I probably won't be able to bring the Lada out there on it because I'll probably get stuck or something, and that would be bad. But that would be cool to go see it. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would like to see. Honestly, I want to see everything around here and do everything around here at some point in the future. It's just about finding the time. That's all. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one's going to go to Miguel, who said, "What kind of government will the U.S. install in Venezuela? Will it be democracy or dictatorship?"
It probably would be a democracy, and then it'd probably devolve into a dictatorship, I'd assume. Because it probably would be a very unstable democracy, to be entirely honest. Because we probably just take the republic template and then just shove that right on Venezuela, which probably wouldn't work. So I hope that does address it the best I can, and we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to Carrion Crow, who said, "Do you think that Venezuela is being used by the axis of evil to take our attention and energy away from them and move it to South America?"
Not necessarily, because we kind of chose to make a deal out of Venezuela. We could have just completely ignored it, and it wouldn't have become a big deal. Because as far as what we're doing, nobody was really doing anything to turn Venezuela into a threat. We just made them into an issue, and now that's caused a whole issue. That's really caused a problem. So there was nothing for us to respond to there that they were doing to distract us. We just distracted ourselves for some reason. I don't know why, but I hope that does address it the best I can. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person that threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to Avari Mandabratis, who said, "Since it appears the Tomahawk missile use has been approved, assuming the U.S. and Ukraine were training and prepping Ukraine crews behind the scenes, how soon can it be before they're used?"
I would say that it's probably going to be about a couple of more months if they're getting a crash course, and maybe an entire year if they're getting the full lessons that can be provided to them. It's not a quick and easy process to operate a missile or a weapon system like that, so I would generally have to say it's probably going to be a good while before we ever see a Tomahawk used, or even provided for that matter, so I hope that does address that the best we can. And with that, folks, it's time for us to round out tonight's stream. And I've got to say, folks, what a wild stream it was. While my vocal cords are not doing well, it was almost a 3-hour stream tonight, which is pretty wild to see, and hopefully a great return to form back for all of y'all. I've got to say, it's a wonderful and amazing thing to see that the Lee Spring Army has been able to raise $2,727 for Nova Ukraine. A truly amazing thing, and it's wonderful to know that people here in the Lee Spring Army still have hearts of gold and are still trying to help out on the very news we cover and the people that we talk about each and every single day through these fundraisers. I also have to say that it's been a wonderful night for us personally to return back on air. I'm not really feeling the best. I'm still recovering from a sickness, but I wouldn't have been any other place rather than here if I had a choice. And I don't have a choice, folks. My boss is very, very, very tedious, and my boss is me. So, we had to get back on air. And honestly, it didn't do too badly, and hopefully my voice problem will be done by Tuesday, because, folks, we are, of course, not going to be running a show on Monday. We're returning right back to our normal streaming schedule, so this is pretty much rounding out the whole week that we weren't here for, because we were moving. So this will be the show for the week, and then we'll be back on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of news from around the world. And also, if there is a short war video to be made, Enforcer Matt will be the one making that tomorrow. I have to try and fix my video editor. But with that, we will see y'all all then, either at one point or the other. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, Hurram Slava, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, it was good to be back once again tonight, and good to see you all in the chat once again. And we will be seeing you all on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern at our usual time. And also, we will be seeing you tomorrow midday on that short war video if there is enough news to cover. And I must admit, it is weird as hell getting off at 11 o'clock at night, even on the Sunday night fundraiser stream. It feels really weird. But also, I think it's going to be a really good change, too, because we actually get to sleep on a somewhat decent time. So that's also a good thing. But it was good to see you all once again. And a huge shout out to the almost 100,000 people that were here by the end of the stream, and we appreciate every single one of you. And with that, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest, and good night.
trust